Good evening, everybody. Corey Barata from the Hawkeye of the Storm here at about 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, January 8th. Wanted to take an opportunity this evening to discuss where Iowa's roster is. All right. And I know we've discussed quarterback and potential options within the portal. We've talked about it at length. But I want to kind of update everybody as to where we're at in college football in general. I have very limited inside information as to conversations that have been had by Iowa with potential quarterbacks in the portal. My guess is that there have been close to no conversations. But regardless, want to talk about where we're at. Want to take your calls and just hang out for a bit this evening. Again, discussing Iowa football. We'll be here talking about the national championship game tomorrow, Sunday, over at the Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel with Coach Don Patterson. So Don has some excellent analytics previewing Georgia, Alabama. Again, we'll be live at the Iowa channel and on Mark Rogers' main channel, the Voice of College Football on YouTube. So the question we're addressing this evening, and we will talk about the All-American Bowl, which was aired earlier today live on NBC and did involve two Iowa I got quarterbacks on my mind. Two Iowa recruits for the class of 22. So, transfer portal quarterbacks remaining. All right. Options still out there. Let's talk about the options, folks. And I'm gonna leave the caller line is open. So let me make sure we have the number up here for everybody. Here's the number, bottom of the screen. If you want to give us a call, all right. We're going to discuss the portal. We're going to discuss the All-American Bowl, and we're going to discuss the roster shuffle that is going on right now with Iowa as a result of several players now declaring for the draft and one major addition to the 2022 roster by way of the return, I should say, of cornerback Riley Moss. So let's get to our first question before we discuss details on quarterbacks out there. Asked the question, is Xavier Williams done with us next year? The answer to that question, as far as I'm aware, he is. Xavier Williams, of course, the transfer from UNI. And as you'll recall, he played very limited minutes this year for Iowa. All right, he played some on special teams, really had problems finding the depth chart even when Iowa was down at cornerback. All right. And again, just a disappointing result to a transfer that was fairly highly touted. People were excited about what he could potentially do at Iowa. And, Don Patterson, who, again, we talk with all the time on this show and over at the Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel, he watched Xavier Williams a lot because Don does some television work for the the Missouri Valley and the FCS. And had only good things to say about Xavier, and it just never really materialized here. Last I heard, and this is through a conversation that I know was had with, I believe it's the Hawkeye newspaper, if I have that correct, in eastern Iowa, Xavier told this newspaper that he was moving on. So my guess is Xavier Williams kind of saw the writing on the wall as far as playing time is concerned. Now, could he transfer somewhere else? I suppose he could. With COVID, you'd have an extra year of eligibility, but as far as I'm aware, he is moving on, whether that be here, somewhere else, or trying to find a way onto an NFL roster, or at least into a camp. So the answer to this question is yes, I do believe he is done. If you missed our segment on the announcement from Dane Belton, it's on this channel. We just posted it a few hours ago, so a kind of a quick reaction to the Riley Moss news. So check that video out when you get a chance. Okay. Is it Alan? I still don't know if it's pronounced Alan or Alan. I know you're a common commenter on here, so if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, please let me know. But he says Indiana gets a transfer quarterback. Nebraska gets a transfer quarterback. Kirk Ferentz and company believes Spencer Petras and company could win the West in 22. Well, the answer to that question is they won the West in 21, right? Do I believe that this team can win the West again with this same offense? with next year's schedule, I don't. I've been very outspoken about that, and I'm not giving you anything earth-shattering there. But no, I don't believe Iowa has a shot. I don't think they have a realistic shot to win the West next year with this offense. If the offense can take a big step forward, sure, we can have that discussion. But the schedule is so much more difficult. Wisconsin's going to have a lot of guys back. Yeah, they lose a few, but man, you're going to get a year older Braylon Allen, who was spectacular as a 17-year-old this year at running back. I would expect Graham Mertz to get better. He was a 5-star kid coming out of high school. He kind of, has sputtered these first 2 years, but at times he made some plays late this season. I would expect him to be developed further. And Wisconsin has not been the Class A example of a program developing quarterbacks. But let's be honest, they've developed quarterbacks better than Iowa has developed quarterbacks. I don't think you can really debate that. Now, you can say Russell Wilson wasn't a Wisconsin product. It was a North Carolina State product. I'll accept that argument. But from Russell Wilson to Scott Tolzien, there's two guys right there that have played in the NFL. Of course, Russell Wilson, a star, former MVP. But Tolzien was an NFL guy. Iowa has had really one NFL guy. I don't count Ricky Stanzi as an NFL guy. He was on a roster briefly, right? He was with the Jaguars, he was with the Chiefs. CJ Beathard is really the only guy who has made it on an NFL roster and stayed on an NFL roster for an extended period of time. He has either been with the Jaguars or the 49ers basically since he left college. Wisconsin's going to be right there next year. And I think they're the favorites. I think Minnesota is going to be really good. They lose some up front, but they've got a crop of young running backs. I know at least one of them is leaving Minnesota just due to a pileup, but they'll have Mo Ibrahim back next year. So Minnesota and Wisconsin to me are 1A and 1B right now as far as projecting forward. And then I'd probably say Purdue and Iowa are 2A and 2B. Because I think Purdue, even though you lose David Bell and George Karlaftis, I think they're going to be just fine. You got a lot of skill position. I mean, we saw it against Tennessee. Bell wasn't playing in that game. Karlaftis wasn't playing in that game. Now, the defense is going to struggle. My understanding is that they are losing their defensive coordinator. Of course, again, they lose Karlaftis, who is a heck of a playmaker on the defensive line. But Purdue is going to be right there. So, and then again, you pair that with the fact that Iowa has a gauntlet of a schedule. And certainly that doesn't look good for the Hawkeyes. I'm not saying they can't win it. Again, the offense has to take a big step forward before I start talking about West championships. And for the record, again, nothing earth-shattering, but if you follow my content here since July or August, I predicted it well before the season started that Iowa would win the West. Now, I'm happy to say I was correct in that prediction. Certainly didn't expect them to win it the way they did, and with the offense being as bad as it is, but they did win the West. All right. So that's something. And then, of course, Allen goes on to say, what is wrong with this picture? Why can Indiana get a transfer quarterback? Why can Nebraska get a quarterback? Mario Family Fishing says, what is wrong is you are comparing the Hawks, the Hoosiers, and the Cornhuskers. That's what I see as wrong here. Completely different situations with all three. You're right. And he brings up a valid point. Michael Penix was the starter with Indiana before he got hurt. He transfers to Washington. They were in need of a quarterback. Nebraska loses Adrian Martinez. They do have Smothers coming back, but he's young. But again, they lost a guy as a result of the transfer who was a 3 or 4 year starter in Adrian Martinez. So they needed a guy. All right. So I understand the difference there. I will say this in defense of Allen with this comment. I have a bit of a problem with just dismissing the notion that we shouldn't be comparing. These are programs. You look at, again, Nebraska, for instance. Yes, they lost Adrian Martinez. They needed someone at quarterback. I could argue that Iowa is in just as big of a need at quarterback as Nebraska is, as Indiana is. Now, you may scoff at that, but prove me wrong. The numbers bear out that Iowa has had these last 2 seasons, despite the fact that they went 10-4, They went 6-2 the year before. They have done so despite quarterback play that is near the very, very bottom of the Big Ten. All right. And that's not good when you have the likes of Rutgers, who has struggled at quarterback. You have an Illinois team in Brandon Peters, who's been, I don't want to call him a failure. That's not fair to him, but certainly hasn't panned out like teams like Iowa and Michigan, who recruited him, expected him to. Northwestern's been a dumpster fire at quarterback, at least this past year and 2 years prior. Iowa has quarterback play that has been bad. All right. And again, I say it over and over again. I've defended Spencer Petras. I've defended Alex Padilla. It's nothing personal against those guys. Nothing personal. I've heard nothing good about Spencer Petras' character, and the same with Alex Padilla. Nothing. I've heard nothing bad about any of those guys. Same with Deuce Hogan. Now, Deuce is headed to Kentucky. I wish him all the best. I don't blame him for leaving. I think he felt disgraced. I think he felt betrayed. And that's his right. I can see where he's coming from. My point here is Iowa is in a big need for quarterback. I've heard people say, and I had somebody reach out to me on Twitter, and I appreciate everybody that does reach out, whether it be through YouTube or Facebook or Twitter, whatever the case may be. I appreciate the interaction. But I had somebody on Twitter earlier this week say, it's just not realistic that Iowa is going to go into the portal for a quarterback. It's just not realistic because they've got 3 quarterbacks on scholarship now. They have a quarterback coming on next year who will be on scholarship, Carson May out of Oklahoma. And then they have another scholarship quarterback coming back in 2023. So that's the reasoning that Iowa doesn't need a quarterback, or they're not going to go after a transfer portal quarterback because they're full at that position. Well, first of all, if we're looking at, and I've said this before, if we're looking at the transfer portal as merely a means to fill scholarships up, we have bigger problems than I thought. Okay? Let me repeat that. If Iowa is looking at the transfer portal as a mere means to fill scholarships and fill a roster, we have bigger problems than I initially thought. Because there are teams, and I understand a lot of the we've mentioned Indiana, we've mentioned Nebraska. You could say the same about Auburn, Oklahoma. A lot of these teams that are gaining transfer quarterbacks also lost a quarterback to the transfer portal. But again, we're not talking about specifically numbers, right? We're talking about performance, production. So, for instance, Auburn loses Bo Nix to Oregon, right? They're left with very limited production, right? Now they're left with even less experience than in Iowa, but you can't sit here and tell me that a Bo Nix-less Auburn team has less proven production than an Iowa team. And maybe you make that argument, but it's not a huge gap, all right? Because what we have seen from this quarterback room at Iowa, specifically Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla, is a lack of quality production, all right? I've been very outspoken that I think Alex Padilla deserved the opportunity to chance in the Citrus Bowl. That didn't happen. I'm not there at practice every day. I'm not seeing what Kirk and Brian and Ken O'Keefe are seeing. But my point is, production-wise, Iowa is in just as big of a need as Indiana, Nebraska, Auburn. Washington State sounds like they may be getting Cameron Ward out of Incarnate Word, who's one of the higher touted kids in this portal. And again, you can go down the list. Pittsburgh, of course, they're losing Pickett to the NFL. They just got Keaton Slovis from USC. You just go down the line here. UCLA, South Carolina, all these teams that have lost quarterbacks and have gained quarterbacks. But again, if you're looking at the portal as merely a means to fill numbers, fill scholarships, fill positions, spots on the roster, then we've got problems. And we need to take another look at what the portal is. I know that my guess is, and I think it's pretty obvious by the way that Iowa has talked about the portal, specifically Kirk Ferentz, that it's not something that Kirk loves, right? He doesn't like the portal. He's old school. I get it. He's old school. But the fact of the matter is, the portal is here to stay, folks. It's not going anywhere, okay? Just like NIL is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So if you continue to dig your heels in and fight and fight and fight, or say, we're either going to be very limited in our portal usage, or we're not going to use it at all, then you're going to fall behind. You're going to be damaged. And I guess you can keep your pride intact by doing that. But believe me, it's going to show up in the win-loss column in time. All right. And I think that time is this year. That's why I've been so outspoken about going to get a transfer portal quarterback, at least entertaining the idea, going out there and contacting guys. There are so many guys out there, and a lot of them are gone now. A lot of them, the window has passed. But there are so many guys in the portal this year that have proven themselves at Division I Power 5 schools, proven starters that have left for various reasons. All right. Keaton Slovis leaves. They have a coaching change with Lincoln Riley coming in. You've got the kid from Washington State who we'll talk about. They had a coaching change. Coach got fired because he wouldn't get vaccinated. You've got the situation with Adrian Martinez. He's a grad transfer. He wants to go where his girlfriend's at Kansas State, so he leaves. I mean, there's all kinds of explanations for these transfers. The point is, there are proven guys everywhere, and there are still proven guys out there. But here's the deal. This is why I wanted to do this show today, because I believe if I waited a week to do this show, if I waited until the 15th to do this show next Saturday, my guess is, and I could be wrong, but the portal may be dry at quarterback. The portal may be dry at quarterback. And I'm not saying that this show, me going live and us talking about this evening, is going to do anything for Kirk Ferentz, or it's not going to. I don't expect anybody in the coaching staff to hear this or to be.
Big comment.
Yeah, yes, sir. You're on the air.
Hey, Corey, how are you? It's Alan. So you read my my email, and I know people are complaining that it's hard to compare Iowa with Indiana and Nebraska, but it's frustrating, especially watching the Citrus Bowl, to watch our quarterback play as bad as he did, and then listening to the comments by his mom about Iowa fans trashing him and this and that. Iowa's a top 20 team. We should not go into next season with this quarterback as our quarterback. And you look at places like Indiana, they knew they had an issue with Penix leaving. They got themselves a quarterback. Nebraska searched a couple of places. They got Casey Thompson. And the problem is Kirk and his staff, they're so comfortable with this quarterback and this quarterback room. How are we going to take this program to the next level if we're going to just stay status quo? It's just so frustrating.
Well, Alan, can I say something? Can I say something? Then I'll let you go. I don't think Kirk Ferentz is comfortable with this quarterback room at all. I actually don't. I don't think he's comfortable with anybody. I think for Kirk Ferentz, Spencer Petras is the lesser of what he views as two evils, right? So to speak. I'm not trying to take an attack on anybody's character, but you know the expression. The lesser of two evils here. Yeah. Spencer is the safest option, right? Spencer, you watch Alex Padilla in those 3 to 4 games where he actually played, and he would be throwing the ball into tight windows. I mean, there were a lot of potential interceptions dropped. Now, Spencer had some as well, but I watched Alex Padilla take chances. He's able to move his feet, which in Kirk Ferentz's mind is, this is from my vantage point, I see Kirk looking at that as a risk, a liability, rather than a potential threat, a weapon. That's just how he views it. It's an opportunity for fumbles. It's an opportunity for mistakes. And so Spencer is the safest option. And I think it's more of a fear of bringing in a guy who we don't feel we can develop quick enough or teach our offense quick enough. And that's a problem because, again, that comes back to coaching. I know the comment was made by Alex Padilla during bowl prep that it takes 1.5 years to learn this offense. That's ridiculous. I can tell you I'm not a coach. I'm not a former Division I athlete, but I can tell you that's a really extreme estimate. And if it takes that long to learn Iowa's offense, then we need to regenerate our offense. So I don't think he loves the quarterback room. I just think he's not comfortable going out there and doing something like going into the portal for somebody who has played for a different program.
It's laughable. I read yesterday that DeLaura is going to transfer from Washington
Go get him.
State.
They need to go get him.
He's perfect for this offense. And one final question. I have friends who are Michigan fans. I have friends who are Ohio State fans. And they look at me as an Iowa fan and they're like, why? They look at me watching Spencer Petras all season long and they're like, your team could have been a top 10 team with a average quarterback. And the idea that this quarterback, 99% of the programs would have decided to go into the portal. Top 20 programs would have gone to the portal immediately after what they watched at the Citrus Bowl. And it seems like we're just staying status quo. And it's just so frustrating to be a top 20 program when you have that type of defense and that type of special teams and weapons on the outside and a great tight end and some good running backs. And you're relying on a quarterback that just for the last 2 years has been putrid. I'm trying to be honest.
I don't think it's completely his fault. I really don't think it's Spencer Petras' fault. I don't want anybody to view that I'm attacking Spencer Petras because I think some fans have taken it and made it personal, and it's not personal. I have been very outspoken against the development that Iowa produces at quarterback or the lack thereof, and the evaluating of quarterbacks. Because, as I've said, you've probably heard me say it, Alan, we've been made to believe time and time again through press conferences, through statements from Kirk Ferentz, that Spencer Petras was by far and away the best guy for the job. We heard it in January of 2020. We heard it before the 2021 season. And then every time Alex played this year, we were told after a good performance, or at least a performance that was on par with Spencer, we were told that, well, pump the brakes on the Alex hype. The only reason he was playing was because Spencer was banged up. So that makes me believe that Iowa believes Spencer is by far and away the better quarterback, which makes me question their ability to evaluate the quarterbacks they have on the roster, which also makes me question their ability to evaluate quarterbacks in the portal, in high school, etc. So I think it's a multi-level problem. And again, Spencer, I have no doubt he's doing the best he can. He's going to get coached by a quarterbacks coach out in the Eastern Seaboard. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But I see what you're saying. Spencer has not been the answer, and that's not a personal attack on him or his character.
And final comment, when your coach's best friend is the quarterback coach, his son is the offensive coordinator, and his son-in-law is the director of recruiting, then he realizes that the buck stops with him, and he just doesn't want to buck the trend. I mean, honestly, if he would watch what the fans are watching when it comes to the quarterback room, he would say this is embarrassing to watch these quarterbacks playing in the Big Ten, playing in the Big Ten championship being awful, playing in the Citrus Bowl playing awful. I mean, it's time to find a real quarterback to lead a program to play against the likes of Ohio State and Michigan and compete on that type of level. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Corey.
Appreciate it, Alan. Thanks for the call. And yeah, I completely agree with this, specifically that last statement that Alan made there on the situation with the coaching staff. I'm not going to sit here and say that Brian Ferentz should be fired, that Kirk Ferentz should be fired, that Ken O'Keefe should be fired. What I will say is this. I completely agree with Alan that when you have your son as the offensive coordinator, you have your son-in-law as a recruiting coordinator, you have a good buddy, a good friend in Ken O'Keefe as your quarterback's coach, it makes for a very sticky situation, right? So you put yourself in Kirk Ferentz's position. Now, you can say he did it to himself by going and hiring these guys. And I think Tyler Barnes, for the record, Tyler Barnes is doing a fine job, right? Let's just be honest. These last two recruiting classes have been really quality classes, right? Two of the best classes in Kirk Ferentz's tenure. So I'm not saying anything about Tyler Barnes. But put yourself in Kirk Ferentz's position. Again, you have Ken O'Keefe there. You have Brian Ferentz there. You're struggling with offense in general, and you're struggling at the quarterback position. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? If you identify the problem as being coaching, what is Kirk Ferentz? What would you do as Kirk Ferentz? I'd love to know. Give us a call and tell me what you think. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. The number is at the bottom of your screen, because I really don't think it's a simple solution. And yes, you've kind of put yourself in this position by hiring these guys and promoting Brian to offensive coordinator. He's not firing his son. It's not happening. All right. He's not demoting his son. That's not happening. I don't believe he's firing Ken O'Keefe. I don't think there's any chance that happens. Now, Ken O'Keefe is 68 years old. Could he decide to retire? That's a question. I have no idea what Ken O'Keefe's plans are as far as retirement. I have no idea. So there could potentially be a staff change if Ken decides to hang it up. I don't know if Ken is still enjoying his job. I don't know if he needs the $650,000 a year. I doubt he does. He spent some quality time as Iowa's OC in the early 2000s, and then, of course, went to the NFL and coached with the Dolphins for a while. I'm sure Ken is doing fine financially. Of course, I can't speak for him on that, but my point is Kirk is in a difficult position as far as making coaching changes, and he's put himself in that position. And I'm not saying he wants to make a coaching change, but even if he did want to make a change, how is he going to do that? And is it worth him, from his vantage point, is it worth it for him to make a change this late in his career? You just won 10 games. You're on your last 2 to 3 years of coaching. Is it worth it in his mind to make that change? I think that's a big time question, whether you agree with it or whether you don't agree with it. All right. CJ, do we know if Iowa is targeting anyone in the transfer portal for quarterback? The answer is a big, fat no. The answer is no. I don't know if Iowa is targeting anybody. If you had to put a gun to my head, I would say they're not targeting anybody. Because as of right now, and I can give you a quick rundown of the guys you probably, again, if you've listened to our content or you follow college football, you follow the transfer portal, you understand the people, the quarterbacks who, again, have been starters at select programs who has been in and out of the transfer portal over the last few weeks, right? Zach Calzada. Quick rundown of Calzada. He was the starter after Texas A&M's starting quarterback went down. Calzada filled in for him admirably, won that game against Alabama. Alabama's only loss this year, and Calzada looked really good. By the way, Iowa recruited Calzada back in 2019. They offered Calzada, so they have a relationship with him. He's off the board. He's headed to Auburn. Keaton Slovis. I was familiar with Keaton Slovis. They didn't recruit him out of high school, at least not heavily, but he did, of course, play against Iowa in 2019 at the Holiday Bowl. Looked, I thought, really good before he went down with an injury due to a big hit from A.J. Epinesa. Slovis would have been a pretty darn good option for Iowa. Instead, he goes to Pittsburgh, who's losing Kenny Pickett. Adrian Martinez, you may laugh at that. I would have been all for Adrian Martinez coming to Iowa. All right. Now, you can say he's erratic. He's also a playmaker. He's also mobile. He's also extremely athletic, and I expect him to do good things at Kansas State. I don't know, as far as Kansas State's system, if they're going to be able to bring him to the next level and make him an NFL quarterback, but I think it certainly would have been an upgrade to what Iowa has now. Taisun Phommachanh, I've talked about him. We'll talk about him later, but Clemson kid, was recruited by Iowa, was offered by Iowa, played quarterback with Nico Reganey in Connecticut back in the 2009. He was, of course, part of the 2019 recruiting class. So he's got connections to the program. He is still on the board, right? Bo Nix, of course, was on the board from Auburn. He's headed to Oregon. Caleb Williams, we know, is on the board. We'll talk about him in a little bit, from Oklahoma. Spencer Rattler, of course, from Oklahoma. He transfers to South Carolina. Dylan Gabriel from Central Florida was headed to UCLA, retracted that commitment, and is now headed to Oklahoma. And I am just reciting these off the top of my head because it's ridiculous how many guys there are, and most of these guys now have homes. Casey, we had our caller mention Casey Thompson, starter at Texas. He is now headed to Nebraska. Connor Bazelak kind of lost his job at Missouri, kind of a complicated situation there, but he did win co-SEC Freshman of the Year a year ago for the Tigers. He is now headed to Indiana, who, by the way, lost their quarterback, Michael Penix. He is headed to Washington. Cameron Ward, starter at Incarnate Word, put up freakish numbers this year for Incarnate Word. was being heavily recruited by Ole Miss, Washington State, etc. Sounds like he might be headed to Washington State, but nothing official. Jack Plummer, guy from Purdue. Of course, Iowa's familiar with him. He's been the starter in West Lafayette, but he's also played kind of a backup role to Aiden O'Connell. Rumors are he's headed to Cal. I don't believe he has officially announced that, but that's just kind of a brief summary of some of the quarterbacks who were out there. Jarret Doege's another one, the starter at West Virginia. He's in the portal. I could go on and on and on and on. And I'll tell you this before we take our next call here. As far as Iowa targeting anyone, I have not heard one valid report about Iowa targeting anybody, including the guys that Iowa has had relationships with, specifically Calzada and Phommachanh and Bazelak. Bazelak's another guy. Iowa recruited him, and I heard nothing, and Indiana was able to nab him. Let's take our next call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, this is Vincent.
Hey, Vincent.
Hey, I just want to touch on a couple things you guys are talking about with the portal and quarterbacks. First thing, I'm on the same page as you as far as Iowa looking to target somebody in the portal. I think there's no chance that they're doing that. I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. I know you said that you don't feel Kirk is comfortable with his quarterback room, but I think he, Ken O'Keefe, and Brian are, because they know they have Petrus and Padilla there, which is why, because if they needed a quarterback, or if they thought that they needed a quarterback, they would have delved into that portal to try to get an upgrade over Petrus or Padilla. But I think they just feel comfortable with who they have. That's my.
What makes you think that they're willing to go into the portal at quarterback?
No, I don't think that they want to. I think that they're comfortable with who they have. If they
but what you said is, if they weren't comfortable, you believe they'd be comfortable going into the portal, correct?
Yeah, if they needed a quarterback, but I don't think that they feel that they need one. I think they're comfortable with Petrus. They're comfortable with Padilla. If they felt they needed an upgrade, they would have gone into the portal, but they don't think that they need one, which is why we haven't heard anything on the media front that, so-and-so is looking at Iowa, or that we're looking at a specific quarterback, because I'm sure Brian and Kirk and Ken O'Keefe are all sharing Krispy Kreme saying, nope, we're good. We're good at the quarterback position.
Well, here's why I say, Vincent, let me explain why I believe that. There's a couple of reasons why I believe Iowa is actually not comfortable at the quarterback position. One being, and I know that Iowa typically doesn't allow its quarterback to just have every play in the playbook. I mean, it's a very finite system as far as quarterback independence and whatnot. But if you compare the careers of Spencer Petrus and Nate Stanley, and you can say, well, Nate Stanley's a 3-year starter. Spencer Petrus has been here now. It started for 2 years. I know last year was a shortened year. But if you just compare the two quarterbacks, just with the eye test, you'll see that Spencer Petrus doesn't have near the flexibility and the access to the playbook for audibles. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen Spencer Petrus audible to a pass play once in his career. Now, Nate Stanley rarely did. But my point is, you can just tell, at least in my eyes, that Iowa was a lot more comfortable with a guy like Stanley, with a guy like Vandenberg or Stanzi, whoever you want to name, Beathard. And I don't see that same flexibility. I think there's also a reason why Iowa runs so much on 3rd and 26. They ran on like 2nd and 26 in the bowl game. I don't think they trust the guys they have back there right now. But I also don't think they're comfortable enough with the portal and I don't think they're comfortable in their own skin, to be completely honest, recruiting. And so I think there are different variables, but I would not say that they're comfortable. You could be right. Maybe Kirk views Spencer Petrus as the second coming, but I would struggle to believe that.
I don't think he views Spencer or Alex as the second coming, but Kirk has a method to his madness, and it's not just on the defensive side, but it's on the offensive side as well. He wants to run the ball and emphasize running the ball to have control of the game time, or what's the word I'm looking for? He wants to control the clock in the game, which is
sure.
I've heard him talk before about running the ball, slows the game down for us, puts us in a better position, kind of running things a little bit analytically, instead, because if you just have a pass happy offense, you're not grinding clock, you're not chewing clock, you're not putting the percentages in your favor by trying to run and gun. So Kirk has a method to his madness. And again, I don't think it has anything to do with Kirk or Brian. Pardon?
It's not working. The method is not working.
No, you're absolutely right. It's not. But just from a viewer's perspective, when it comes to the comfortability of the QB room, we've heard Kirk and Brian say it. We're really comfortable with either guy. Whoever's in there, we have trust in, and that's what I really think that's what they believe, is that these guys can get it done, but they're not. And that's what the fans keep seeing is the stagnant offense, the just what you see on the field each day. Now, I'm going to put a different hat on you, Corey. If you're a head coach or a college coach and you're heading up this Iowa football team, you already think you need a quarterback, right? Over Padilla and Petrus.
Yeah, I'm pretty certain on that. Pretty firm on that.
So wouldn't you go into the portal and do everything you could to upgrade your quarterback position? And the reason I ask that's because we don't see Iowa doing that. We don't see Kirk or Brian trying to do that. There's no rumors of Iowa doing that. So that's what leads me to believe that they are comfortable with that room. Because if you're in that position, Corey, and you're coaching this team, you're absolutely going to that portal and you're looking to upgrade your quarterback position. And I'm assuming you would, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely. But I think the difference is, again, I'm not going to bring in age, because I don't think age, people who say that, well, Kirk is old, he's in his 60s, he's old school, he doesn't like the portal. I know a lot of young, older coaches out there who are willing to use the portal, or who would be willing to use the portal at quarterback if you have an immediate need. That's just common sense. If you have a need there, you have to figure out a way to upgrade the need. But I think Kirk is just uncomfortable. I just think he's uncomfortable with the portal just because of who he is. He's not comfortable. He doesn't believe that they can get a quarterback in there ready in a matter of 8 to 9 months. So I think if he believes that if he looks at the list of quarterbacks who are available now, say it be Casey Thompson, who's going to Nebraska, and he says, yeah, he was a starter at Texas, but he's got to spend 1.5 years just to learn our offense. So, yeah, we need help now, but we've got Carson May coming in the fall. We've got Marco Lainez coming in next year. We might as well just wait. I think Kirk is comfortable waiting, and I think that's the problem. I don't believe he believes in his own coaching staff to be able to develop a guy guys who have learned at least one offense. Some of these guys have learned multiple offenses. I mean, Doege, he was at Bowling Green. He was at West Virginia. You look at a guy like the kid that now I lost it. The kid from Virginia Tech, Burmeister. I didn't mention him earlier. He was at Oregon. Then he was at Virginia Tech. He's a grad transfer. I believe that these kids, if Iowa actually made a concerted effort to go get somebody who had that kind of experience, would be able to learn Iowa's offense if you had an entire spring and fall camp. But I don't believe Kirk Ferentz believes that.
Well, I agree with you. I know you agree with you there. You can trim down your offense, especially from your OC's perspective, to make sure that you're putting this kid or whoever this transfer might be or would be in the best position to be successful. It doesn't take 1.5 years to learn an offense. I agree with you there. The second point I was wanting to make with you or say to you, transfers don't want to come to Iowa. So even if, let's say, Kirk or Brian or Ken are in the background trying to, put feelers out to these quarterbacks, nobody wants to come to Iowa. Not as a transfer quarterback. And there's two reasons, and you may agree or disagree, but it stems even back to just initial recruiting. But if you're a transfer, do you want to go to a place where you have Petrus and Padilla still sitting there and you have to compete? No, you don't want to do that. You want to go to a place where you can compete right away. And these guys, most of these high-profile quarterbacks, they've gone to a program where pretty much they're walking into a starting position or competing for the starting position. They're not going to be doing that at Iowa.
But are you telling me that if Iowa had went and gotten Casey Thompson, or they go and get Delora from Washington State, you're telling me that he wouldn't be the de facto starter?
Do I think so at Iowa? No, because Kirk, look at Cody Sokol, who transferred in from an Arizona community college a few years back. Yeah, he kind of came in with the same mentality.
But Cody Sokol, in his defense, Cody Sokol was competing with two guys who were very successful. Jake Rudock was really good at Michigan. I thought he was pretty good at Iowa, although some fans disagreed. And C.J. Beathard was tremendous. That was just actually a really good quarterback room. I don't think you can compare the situations. This is a totally different situation. This quarterback room is not near the quality of that 2013 room.
Well, I hate to disagree with you because I agree with you on a lot, but that year, and I believe it was 2015 or end of 2014, that quarterback spot was open for grabs. Meaning we had Rudock,
13,
Beathard, Beathard, Rudock, Sokol, and there was even a fourth guy if I remember right. But they were all competing for that starting spot. And when Sokol didn't get it, he transferred out and went to, I can't remember where, but went somewhere
Louisiana
else
Tech.
And became a starter. Was it Virginia Tech?
Louisiana Tech.
Or Louisiana Tech. And he went there and, was anointed the starter right away. Most of these guys, if somebody were to come to Iowa, they know that they're going to be competing for a starting job, not walking into one. And most of these other quarterbacks, the ones that you've named that are extremely talented, Slovis is not going over to compete. He's going over to walk into a starting job. Bo Nix is going to Oregon to walk into a starting job. Most of these guys, probably over 90% of them, are walking into starting gigs. So nobody's going to want to come to Iowa and compete for a starting job because that's what they know they'd have to do, because Iowa's predicated on everything is an open competition. Kirk said that too. Now, once in a while, Kirk will come out preseason and say, yes, Petrus is our starter. If you have Stanley, who's already been a starter for 2 years, yes, that's the exception to the rule. But other than that, you're competing for a starting job. And really, that's what you should be doing. But secondly, Iowa doesn't have a prolific passing offense. Not only does it hurt us in a circumstance like this with the transfer portal, but we've had we've had a few over the past 10 to 12 years, high-rated quarterbacks in the state of Iowa that we recruited that we did not get. And I know you're probably shaking your head saying, I can't think of many, but I look back to the most recent, which was Max Dugan, went to TCU, which was a prolific passing offense. Before that, the highest-rated quarterback was A.J. Derby, who we got, but we're really planning on switching him to linebacker like his dad played. Once he realized he wasn't going to be the starter at Iowa, he transferred out and ended up at Arkansas. Before that was Kyle Orton. Kyle Orton didn't want to come to Iowa because we weren't a prolific passing offense. So our offense doesn't attract quarterbacks to begin with. So it's going to be extremely hard for us to recruit a quarterback, let alone get a transfer who knows he's going to come in and run a run-first oriented offense. Anyway, not to go too long into that, but just wanted to give you those 2 cents, Corey.
Well, I'll say this, and you could be, maybe you're right about a quarterback not wanting to come here. My problem when people bring that up, and I've had a lot of people bring it up, well, why would an Iowa quarterback want to come here? How do you know if you don't contact him? Like if Iowa doesn't even reach out, how can we say that definitively?
I absolutely agree. And not only that, but you've said it. Your previous caller, Alan, said it. Just imagine if you had, and I love Keaton Slovis, so my brother has mentioned him to you. He's an extremely accurate, on-point quarterback who I really thought would be looked at as a first-round pick. If you put Keaton Slovis in our offense and he's able to become the starter and run our offense, he would make or elevate our offense not just nationally, but it would put us up in the top 10, top 5, because we have a quarterback that has an arm to do it. And just like Alan was stating, if we could solidify that quarterback position and get somebody that's a talented quarterback in there, it would take us from, that 15 to 25, or top 20 or top 15 to top 25 range up to an upper echelon team, because we have the quarterback that can also guide us and then that defense to lean on. But for some reason, we just haven't been able to get that quarterback, and not since I've been a Hawkeye fan, as much as I respect Stanzi and Beathard. These are guys that went on to the NFL, and the same thing as Stanley. We haven't had a prolific quarterback that I can remember really since, I don't want to say Brad Banks, because I know he went to the Heisman Trophy presentation and was second in voting. He's probably the best QB in my eyes that we've had since, Chuck Long, Mark Vlasic, some of the other guys under Hayden Fry. That's not our offense. So we're not going to be able to get the high profile guys because they can't pass the ball. A running back's not going to want to go to a school that only passes. Anyway, just some food for thought, Corey. Sorry.
No, I appreciate your take on that. And I will say, I think you're selling CJ Beathard a little short. You got to remember, CJ, I know the 12-0 record was a lot more than quarterback play, but if you put him with the crop of receivers that Iowa has had these last 2 years, I think I don't want to say the sky's the limit, but man, the ceiling gets a lot higher, because let's remember, Beathard was dealing with some really below average wide receivers during 15 and 16. That room was really depleted by the end of 2016. And I mean, you go 12-0 in 2015 despite it. So I think you put a guy like CJ Beathard back here, who has been a consistent backup in the NFL. It changes everything. That's just my take on it. But I respect where you're coming from. And again, my big thing, I've been saying it for weeks, just show me that you're willing to pick up a phone and call somebody. Call Kedon Slovis. Call Zach Calzada. Now, those guys aren't available anymore. That's our fault. That's our fault for not reaching out.
Yeah, I'd give a year's salary to see, or to be in that, or Kirk's office, or just to know, did we even attempt it? But we'll never hear if we did.
Well, typically you hear, though, you don't think we would hear at some point? Those reports get out. Kids talk. Kids are not going to be sworn to secrecy by Kirk Ferentz. If Kedon Slovis was recruited or offered by Iowa, I guarantee you that, I shouldn't say guarantee, I would say it's highly likely that word of that would have gotten out. And I have not heard not a peep about anybody being contacted at the quarterback position. Yes, I believe it would have gotten out.
I agree with you. From the athlete's perspective, or from the athlete's camp, yes, it'll leak out somewhere, because somebody will say, okay, who did it come down to? And he'll say, Penn State, Pittsburgh, whomever. But I'm sure Kirk and the powers that be, Kirk, Brian, Ken O'Keefe, and whoever else is in his circle in his office, probably sat down and said, do we need to look at some of the transfer quarterbacks? And I'm sure it was probably shot down fairly quickly, and it never left that room.
Well, then there's the problem.
That's what I'm saying. It's an absolute shame that we're not willing to at least put feelers out and see if any of these high-profile quarterbacks, especially ones that can upgrade our offense, are interested. I agree with you. I don't think we made any effort. If we did, and it comes out later, I'll be shocked, to be quite honest with you. But I do feel Kirk is comfortable with his quarterback room. I think Brian is as well. Because if I wasn't, as the head coach of a Big Ten university or Division I university, I'm going to be reaching out to each and every one of these guys to try to gauge interest, to say, hey, look, you can come over here. You can upgrade our quarterback position on our offense. Tell me what you think. But you've heard crickets on every single one of these guys' camps that are in that portal. But just like the prior caller said, hell, you got Indiana, other schools that aren't as prominent but are more prolific in passing getting them. And that's because, one, Iowa's not that school, and two, we're not reaching out to them. So anyway, Corey, sorry to take so much time.
No, you're good. Appreciate the call, Vincent. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, sir. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Thank you. And for the record, like Nebraska, for instance, Nebraska was connected to all kinds of portal quarterbacks. All right. Now, you can say that's just being reckless, and that's not really giving any attention to who fits into the system. But the fact of the matter is, they were connected to Kedon Slovis. They were connected to Casey Thompson, Braxton Burmeister. Again, those are just the guys off the top of my head that I know that Nebraska reached out to. And so, they're obviously not afraid to be seen. Now, maybe we shouldn't use 3-9 Nebraska as an example, but I don't think Iowa could keep that under wraps. I don't think, not if Iowa was making a hard push at that position. I don't believe Iowa would be able to keep that under wraps. All right. I see this comment here, May all day. Carson May's not going to be here till fall. So I'm talking about an immediate need. The transfer portal has the potential of filling an immediate need at certain positions. And Carson May is not enrolling early. He ain't starting as a true freshman. I will be shocked, blown over. I'll probably die from a heart attack if May starts in 2022. He might be the next great guy, but I'm talking about a need right now this year. Murillo Family Fishing, given the sustained success of the Hawkeyes having Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year and sending defensive backs to the NFL, do you feel the departure of Dane Belton creates any transfer buzz for the available to try to join the Hawks? Well, I know Iowa is in the portal at defensive back, so my guess is they had a feeling that they would lose a couple of guys in the backfield. Riley Moss was a potential loss. They were already losing Hankins. With Belton and Kerner both leaving, I wouldn't be shocked to see Iowa grab a guy or two in the portal at that position. But I also don't think they have to. I don't think they're desperate. They've got, obviously, Xavier Nwankpa coming in next year. You've got Orlando Trader at corner, Cohen and Tringer. He's, again, for freshmen. But if somebody like that can develop, TJ Hall out of California will be here as well. And then, of course, Sebastian Castro's gotten some play, Quinn Schulte. So I think they've got bodies back there. I have confidence in Phil Parker and what he's doing with defensive backfield, but I would not be surprised. I can tell you they are in the portal at defensive back, and they're not afraid to make that public. That's been clear, and they're also trying to get somebody to help up front. I know Hunter Norzad, the grad transfer from Cornell, Iowa is in his final five, his top five, and he is a possible plug and play at tackle. All right, good to see everybody here. I see the question here from I. Did Kirk mean talking about the portal O-line? I don't know what you mean by that question. You'll have to explain. I do see Trish's comment. I thought Kirk Ferentz said they have space and we're open to looking for some guys in the portal. What Kirk Ferentz said when asked about specifically quarterback, which we're talking about, because I don't have any question. Iowa, again, is involved with defensive backs, with O-linemen, potentially receivers as well, and probably if they could find somebody along the defensive line, they may make a move. But specifically quarterback, Kirk was asked specifically about quarterback, so he didn't bring it up out of the blue. And this was after this was on signing day, and Kirk's exact words were "never say never." Okay, so as I've illustrated it in the past, I take that comment, never say never, to be very similar to you if you're a parent and your child asks you when you walk into a grocery store, can I have a candy bar? And you say, we'll see. We'll see. Now, every child who's ever asked that question to their parent knows that we'll see means no. So when you say never, I don't see that as, I see that as basically not wanting to put a damper on that notion because it wouldn't look good publicly, but not really having any desire to actually make a move. Now, I could be totally wrong. Maybe they'll go after somebody, but so far we haven't seen any evidence of that. And I don't know if Kirk thinks that a quarterback's just going to jump into their lap and that Brad Banks is walking through that door, but you got to be able to be aggressive. These kids, a lot of coaches are evolving and using the portal to their advantage. And if Iowa isn't, quarterback not just going to walk through the door and say, hey, I'll fix your problems. Iowa has to be forthright. They have to be aggressive, and I don't believe they are. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello?
Hi. Hello? Oh, hey. Yep. Sorry.
Yo, you're good.
Hi. Hey, yep. Okay. My name's Edwin, and I was just calling in. Wanted to talk about the topic of, getting a new quarterback transferred in.
So I'm assuming you've been hearing the conversation. What are your takes on the current crop of quarterbacks who are out there? And do you believe that if Iowa was actually going out there and recruiting transfers that we would hear about it by now?
Well, I think so, but I really wanted to. I think I have a really good idea. I think I have an answer for the problems that we're having at quarterback.
Okay.
I'm a long time Iowa fan, by the way.
Well, let's hear the solution, because I'd love to know it.
It's pretty simple. I think we need to get a black quarterback to transfer in.
Well, I can see why you're saying it. I mean, typically you have black quarterbacks that are more mobile, and it's not really a racial thing. That I understand. I've heard other people say that, and you can make an argument that the only mobile quarterback who's been a success under Kirk was Brad Banks. So I understand where you're coming from.
I think that's the solution at quarterback.
But there are mobile quarterbacks who are white, for the record. I mean, there are mobile quarterbacks. Perfect example is Casey Thompson, who's headed to, well, I guess he's not white. The kid from Auburn, Bo Nix, very mobile quarterback. One of the more athletic quarterbacks in the entire country. And he's a white guy. So you don't have to, I mean, there are white guys who are mobile, but mobility is something that I think Iowa would really benefit from at that position. I don't think Kirk is comfortable enough with that. And Brad Banks was sort of an outlier. Right? That worked out, and it was early in Kirk's tenure, and I think that made a difference. But I do see where you're coming from as far as mobility is concerned.
Well, I think we need to get a real mobile quarterback, which would mean black. I mean, if we're being blunt about it, if we want to get a real one, it's got to be black. Don't you think?
Well, again, I'm not looking at it from a color standpoint. I like I said, Bo Nix is one of the more mobile quarterbacks in the country. I don't care what their skin color is. If they're mobile and they can throw the ball, they can spin the ball, I'm all for it. But I wouldn't necessarily just say they need to go to get black quarterback. There are also black quarterbacks who are statues. So, I just think they need to go get the best guy available. At least entertain that idea.
Okay. Well, how about this? Bringing a black quarterback in would be, a sign of solidarity with the black community and, pursue, social and racial justice. And I think that'd be really good for the program and for the school right now. I mean, Kirk Ferentz has only ever gotten white quarterbacks in. And
well, no, Brad, hold on a second. Brad Banks was black, sir.
Yeah, but 99% of them are all white, and I think 2 decades into this, it's kind of looking bad right now. I mean, he never wants to go that route with the black quarterback, and I think I don't think bad.
Listen. You have a right to your opinion. I don't believe that Kirk. I don't believe this staff goes after quarterbacks with a view to skin color. Okay, they may have completely the wrong recruiting philosophy on quarterbacks. But I'm not going to go so far to talk about the fact that Iowa or make that jest that Iowa is going after white quarterbacks. I don't believe that is true. Again, Brad Banks is probably, if you had to put again to Kirk Ferentz's head, he'd say Brad Banks was his favorite quarterback, and he'd probably never admit that. But the way he talks about Brad, I think it worked out. Now, that's, again, I'm not going to talk about skin color because I don't think that's what it comes down to, but I would not make that notion that Kirk Ferentz and this staff targets only white quarterbacks. I mean, if you look at nationwide, especially the Big Ten Conference, most quarterbacks are white. That's just how it is. I mean, that's just how it is, whether you like it or not. And I'm not saying that there aren't great black quarterbacks and great white quarterbacks, but that's just the fact of the matter. Most quarterbacks in the Big Ten are white. And they were under Hayden Fry as well.
Well, I think most of them are white due to social inequities and different advantages that white people have and privileges that white people have. I mean, that's the reason I think that's the case. But I mean, okay, I mean, look, why not try it for 1 year? Bring in a black quarterback, start him for 1 year, or maybe just get him and a white guy in there, and then start both of them throughout the year and let them both go at it, and just. He needs to do something like that.
Well, he needs to do something, but we shouldn't be anointing quarterbacks based on skin color. That's all I'll say. Now, again, you have a right to your opinion, but Iowa needs to be going and getting the best quarterback available.
Well, I think the best quarterback available is going to be black.
You have a right to your opinion.
Well, I mean, why do you disagree?
I've explained why I disagree. You got anything else to say, sir? I got a couple other callers that want to get on. Anything else?
Well, don't you think bringing in a black quarterback would advance social and racial justice and show solidarity with the black community?
I think there are a lot of black players on the roster who have helped that notion, Ivory Kelly Martin being one. And I'm not within the program, but I think there are a lot of black players on the roster who are currently helping with needs that maybe cropped up last summer. And again, not within the program, so that would be a question for Kirk Ferentz. But if I'm Iowa, I'm not targeting any position based on race. All right, sir. Have a good night. Appreciate you calling.
All right, whatever.
Sorry, guys. I'm not gonna. We're not going to talk about. I'm not going to. And you have a right to your opinion, but again, I'm not going to talk about a recruiting pitch and a recruiting philosophy that's based on race. I again respect everybody's opinions. You want to call in? Appreciate you calling in, caller. I don't want to sound disrespectful to our caller here, but to me, the philosophy on recruiting any position should be based on race. Look at cornerback. And then we'll move on from this subject. How many white cornerbacks have there been at Iowa? Almost none until Riley Moss. That's just how it. I mean, it is what it is. The best guys who are playing at Iowa at cornerback are playing. They're the best guys, regardless of skin color. And again, the notion that Kirk is trying to play his quarterbacks because they're white or recruiting white quarterbacks is, I believe, is ridiculous. But again, appreciate you calling. Appreciate you listening. All right, let's move on here. I see Erica. Appreciate you being here this evening. Kirk is too lazy to pick up a phone. He has gotten too comfortable. Bernie Floyd. Kirk Ferentz doesn't care what the record is next year. They won the West this year. I don't know that I would say that he doesn't care what the record is. But I don't know that he's taking a real balanced approach to the schedule. I don't know that he's looking at the schedule honestly, because if he's looking at it honestly, because if I'm looking at it honestly, and I'm a homer, I'm an Iowa guy, right? Through and through. But I look at the schedule, I look at it and I say, I don't see more than 8 wins. Maybe 9. Maybe. But boy, that's pushing it. No way do I see 10. I do not see 10 wins next year. So I don't know if Kirk believes that some of the offensive issues can be fixed in the offseason, but I think, as I've stated before, the offense needs some major changes. And I don't necessarily believe that's going to happen, but I could be proven wrong. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
This is Jim.
Hey, Jim. How are you tonight?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. And yourself?
I'm doing all right.
Good. What, I'm a long-time Hawks fan. Anyway, Brian Ferentz, offense coordinator. His play calling is, well, atrocious,
say it.
I guess.
Say it. Just say it.
It's terrible. It's unbelievable. Second and long, you run the ball. So third and long, you run the ball again.
Yep.
Back to back. What?
Yeah.
I just.
But see, don't you think that's partly lack of faith in quarterback? I mean, if you have we saw Iowa run pass plays with Nate Stanley and C.J. Beathard on third and long. We never see that with Spencer Petras. I mean, that to me, that's a direct relation to the confidence you have in your quarterback to make a throw and not make a crucial mistake.
Well, absolutely, I agree. And I think they should have tried Padilla in there. I mean, because Petras, he just. He can't throw. I mean, don't you?
Well, I don't say Petras can't throw. I've tried to give Petras due credit because Spencer has made some really nice throws down the field, and he has his moments. The problem is, cumulatively, he's not getting the job done. I have not seen enough from Alex to say that he's getting the job done. So, yeah, I agree with you. I would put most of the issues, the onus, on QB development at Iowa because –
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, simple things. I brought up the fact that quarterbacks at Iowa, specifically Beathard and Stanley and Petras, they don't even know how to slide. I mean, right. How are you playing in the Big Ten and you don't even know how to slide and protect your body?
Right.
That is,
fundamentally in high school, they teach that. I mean, it's like I don't get it, you know.
Nate Stanley played baseball, and I know he's a pitcher, but for Lord, we can't even teach a quarterback how to slide. That's sad.
It is. It really is. So hopefully
I feel bad for, honestly, caller, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I feel bad for Spencer because I think a lot of people are attacking him, and it's not really fair to him because I think he's doing the best he can. He's hired a coach. I don't believe
No, he's a runner. He's a quarterback.
Say that again.
Mm-hmm. The freshman, that recruit we got coming in for quarterback.
Yeah, Carson May.
Is he supposed to be a dual threat? I mean, he's got some legs underneath him, doesn't he?
No.
Oh, no, not Carson May. The next one.
Marco Linez. Yeah. No, he looks the part. Well, I mean, we'll see in 2023, but again, he's not going to get here till 23, which means he's probably not going to play. So that's 2 years at least. If Carson May, I mean, even if Carson May does develop quickly.
Right. We need help immediately.
Right.
You know. So yeah, like you say, they've got to call out to everybody and anybody and just see, you know, it doesn't hurt to call, you know.
That's the biggest thing I've been preaching for 4 weeks. Why not just call? Why not reach out and gauge interest?
Mm-hmm. It's not going to hurt to try, you know.
And for a perfect example, now you may scoff at the idea that Iowa could get Caleb Williams. I don't think Iowa has a chance to get Caleb Williams, but like, how hard would it be to call up Bob Stoops if you're Kirk Ferentz and say, hey, you just coached Caleb in the bowl game. Can you get me his phone number and I'm going to give him a call? How hard would that be to do that?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, this all goes back to, you know, Iowa could have had, you know, Stoops, you know, and boldly said, well, we'll wait, you know, and so Oklahoma said, okay, we got to take him, you know, and the rest is history. So, but anyway, all I can say is go Hawks, and I appreciate your time.
All right, sir. Have a great night. Thanks for the call.
You bet. Bye now.
Yeah. I can see where our caller is coming from. I've been saying it for a long time now. It doesn't take much to call. And I do believe we just had somebody try to give us a call. Call us back. If the caller who just called in, we missed you by a split second, give us another call. Our line is open, 515-635-1601. We just have one line open at a time this evening, but we are taking your calls and taking your chats. So again, appreciate everybody being here. 515-635-1601. All right. Falling behind on your comments and your chats, so want to get caught up here if I can. All right. Hank says, why would we reach out before we even play our bowl game? I mean, why wouldn't we reach out, Hank? And with all due respect, why wouldn't we reach out? Do we need a 14th game to tell us that we have problems at quarterback? I don't believe that's the case. Now, again, you have a right to your opinion, but I don't think you need to see the game against Kentucky to validate the fact that we have problems at that position. That's just, and again, a lot of other programs reached out before their bowl games. You know that. You know, and again, Nebraska is a bad example because they didn't play in a bowl game. But you know, Pittsburgh obviously was in conversation. So there's no question to me that Iowa could have reached out in early December. So it's been over a month, and I've heard nothing as far as movement. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hi, Corey. This is actually Yakov 22.
Hey, Yakov. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, thank God. I sat down about 15 minutes ago. I went to YouTube, and next thing you know, I saw you're unexpectedly online, and I've been watching the show since.
Appreciate it, sir.
Yeah, with the little NFL in the background here. Actually, Corey, I'm familiar with this topic. Obviously, because I'm Ohio State, a loving fan, but I do follow Iowa fairly closely as well. I watch several games a year, and especially if it's not on, and usually they're not even playing the same as Ohio State, so I watch many games. And I actually had this thought about Iowa for a while. Corey, I wanted to share this with you, and I think it could tie in well to why Kirk doesn't want to take a quarterback transfer. The main thing, I think, is because he's just extremely loyal. And other positions, where you rotate, I think he doesn't have a problem bringing in someone and telling the guys that you're either may not start or you're going to have to share minutes, because anything other than quarterback,
maybe kicker, but any other position besides quarterback, you could do that. But I think when he brought in Padilla, when he brought in Petrus, probably got to know the families, and I think maybe it's wrongly so, but I think he feels he can't bring another quarterback in as transfer because that would potentially cause those guys to transfer or sit down. And you can tell me if you think otherwise, but I just think that he has a problem with that.
Well,
among other things.
You could be right, but let's be honest. That's completely being loyal to a fault. And you've heard the term, it's not personal, it's business. That's what this is. You've got to make the best decision for your offense, mixing two words, for your offense on a night in and night out basis in the conference. So you could be right. Maybe the loyal to a fault theory is correct. I've heard that from a lot of people, but if that's the case, shame on Kirk Ferentz.
I would agree, Corey. I think that's a great personal attribute, but if he was a high school, probably not even high school, but if he was a middle school coach, I probably would say, middle school, let's do that. Let's not get a kid transfer from another middle school. If such a thing even happens, I don't know. But at the Big Ten level, Kirk's making $8 million a year. You have to make difficult decisions. You're not a gym teacher that's getting paid $2,000 a year to coach middle school. He's making $8-9 million a year. He can make tough decisions. But I actually did something wanted to say overall. I think that probably ties into the quarterback, but maybe also as far as I know Iowa fans and have always want them to open up the offense more, make a more dynamic offense. But here's what I'm thinking, Corey. Now I generally knew the Iowa record. I didn't know it exactly, but I just looked up Iowa's year-by-year record. And for the last 15 years, I think that's going back. That's plenty of data. They had one losing season. They're 4-8 in 2012, and every other season, a couple 7-win seasons, multiple 8-win seasons, about 4 or 5 8-win seasons. That's 9, 11, 12, 10. I'm going to call last year, 2020 different, only 6-2. But really, I'm going to give them 9 wins. I think they would have easily won 3 more games last year. Then 10 this year. That's 8.4 wins a year for the last 15 years. And Corey, what I'm thinking is that between him and the university, because they're winning 8.4 games a year, every time I watch Iowa football, if it's not a capacity crowd, it's near capacity crowd. I'm sure they're selling those tickets for a good price. They have sponsors for all the games. The university is making a lot of money. And I have a feeling between Kirk and the university, they want to win. I think they're all in on winning. They want to make the playoffs. They want to win. But at the same time, they're doing well financially. People are in the seats. They're selling sponsorships. And to make a drastic change, in this case, on offense, I think he's thinking that brings us down to, if it doesn't go well, we win 6 games a year, and we start being a little more Indiana-ish, besides maybe the past year or two. Well, not even this year, but 2-3 years ago. That's a big risk. We're winning 8.4 games a year, making money. We're doing well. We're usually playing a New Year's game, and I don't know if he's similar to his loyalty. I'm not sure if he's willing to take the risk of upsetting that apple cart and possibly winning less than 8.4 games a year.
You could very well be right, and that's being satisfied, and that maddens a lot of fans. And I think they have a right to be upset that if that's the case. And I'm not saying it is, but if your theory is correct, there's a ceiling, right? You're automatically placing a ceiling on your program. Now, I saw your question earlier about the high school All-American game. I did watch that, and I will comment on that here in a little bit. But yes, Aaron Graves and Xavier Nwankpa did play in that game, and I was impressed with both guys, especially Graves.
Right. Yeah, they both look really solid, but they're going to be contributors next year. And again, about my comment there, obviously, you know far more about the program than me. I'm just a guy commenting from several hundred miles away. And I don't know anything about that, but that could be. And I just thought I'd throw it out there for you. And by the way, I will say this: I do think Iowa wants to win. I don't think that they want to only win 8 games. I think they would like to win more, but they're just not going to. Right as of now, they haven't changed the offense in a way that will allow them to consistently win more. And that's just what I'm saying, Corey. I will, I know you have other callers and other comments to read, so I'm going to go, but I just want to share those thoughts, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the show.
Yep, and Jakob 22, I know you're a big college football fan. We'll be on with Coach Patterson tomorrow night at the Iowa, the Voice of College Football channel for a national championship preview. So hopefully you can join us then.
I will do. Also, you guys are a great pair. I enjoy hearing both the interaction between you guys.
Appreciate that, Jakob. Have a great night. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
And yes, Courtney Ralph, if Ken O'Keefe retires, will Iowa bring in a different person as a QB's coach? One would think so, right? One would think so. I'm very intrigued as to who that would be. And I have some potential candidates, but I won't get into that because Ken O'Keefe has not retired. And I'm not putting everything on Ken O'Keefe. I don't think quarterbacks have been developed here. Been saying that for a long time. And I don't think Ken O'Keefe is doing the job of a coach that should be paid $600,000 a year. All right. I see a little bit of controversy. Some people, again, I know, Hank, you've defended Kirk, and I understand where you're coming from. Winning 74% of your games is good, but there is always going to be a segment of the fan base that wonders, why can't you win the Big Ten? Why haven't we won the Big Ten outright in decades? Why can't you make the playoff? Those are good. Those are valid questions. I see both sides of the coin there. Hank says Dylan Gabriel set for UCLA until he swerved to Oklahoma. But yeah, we should waste time chasing self-absorbed, self-important QBs who aren't happy starting at places like Oklahoma and USC. Well, Hank, Brian Kelly was at Notre Dame until he wasn't. He left mid-season for LSU, and yet nobody says anything about that. Lincoln Riley is at Oklahoma. He sees greener grass at USC, so he leaves. So why can't student athletes do the same thing? You may not like the portal, all right? But again, if the portal is here to stay, which it is, and Iowa chooses not to use it, you're going to be damaged by it. Whether you want to say it's because you don't want to get involved with kids who are self-absorbed and self-important. Well, again, coaches are allowed to do what they want and go where they want. No, Dylan Gabriel hadn't signed anything with UCLA. He committed, and he decommitted. He swerved to Oklahoma. He hadn't signed anything. He has a right to do it, whether you like it or not. I understand being frustrated by it, but that is the age of college football that we're a part of now. Hyperlocal, I think Kirk is scared to go to the portal because if he chose poorly, he knows Padilla and Petrus would transfer. I think Padilla may transfer anyways. I'll be surprised if Padilla is here in the spring. Won't be shocked, but I will be surprised. CJ, Kirk likes Labus the most, but didn't want to start him in the Citrus Bowl. Right. Maybe you're right. But why wouldn't you give if you're confident in Joey Labus being the starter, and maybe he will be next year. Maybe he will be, but if you're that confident in him, why would you not give him a head start? Why would you not start him? And believe me, if they started Joey Labus and he played really well in the Citrus Bowl, we probably wouldn't be talking. We probably wouldn't be having these conversations because it would calm the fan base. Again, assuming Joey looked good in that game. So that's a smoking hot take. I appreciate that take, CJ, but I won't go that far yet. Murillo Family Fishing, is it fair to say that those who enter the portal need to present themselves to teams they are interested in rather than just wait to hear from interested teams? Absolutely not. I mean, first of all, the portal is designed so that when a player officially enters the portal, then it's legal or within the rules, the confines of the rules to contact the student athlete. So if you're Iowa and you're sitting back waiting for a student athlete to contact you, again, you're going to be late to the party. You're never going to get to that party because, Ole Miss, Auburn, Oregon, even Indiana, Nebraska, I guarantee you these teams are going out and contacting quarterbacks. So I guess you could sit around and wait, but that call is probably never going to come if you're waiting. Spaghetti Factory says 12-0 incoming. Hey, it's always good to have hopes and dreams, I guess. Italicus, Petrus' big sell was his all-around high school numbers. Unfortunately, it didn't translate here at Iowa. Jake says, if Petrus is calling the shots next year, I'm out. He's terrible. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what in the world they see in this limp wrist quarterback. I understand people are angry, but the only caution I'd give you is if Spencer's doing his best, what more do you want from him? Like, the coaches are deciding to start him. The coaches are the ones not deciding to go to the portal. So be mad at the coaches. Don't be mad at Spencer. I think Spencer, I have no reason to think he's not doing his best. And maybe he's not getting developed enough. I think there's a good chance he's not getting developed like he should be. So it's almost a disservice to Spencer. Hawkeye Howard, appreciate you joining us here, and safe travels if you're going out to work. Safe travels. The Spaghetti Factory, I enjoy Petrus holding the ball too long and taking drive-killing sacks. How are you guys frustrated with that? I think you said it all right there. Hyperlocal, Kirk has actually stated that publicly he thinks Spencer is great because he didn't turn it over a whole lot. That was stated after Penn State. I wonder if he feels the same way. Yeah, I've said the same thing, that I think that's a big part of why Kirk sticks with Spencer, is because he is considered by Kirk to be the less risky play. All right. He's also got the much lower ceiling, in my opinion. All right. Our line is open. Numbers at the bottom of the screen there. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. I want to address, as we're awaiting our next call, the All-American Bowl today. If you watched it, it was on NBC, and Xavier Nwankpa was a part of it. Aaron Graves was a part of it. I thought Aaron Graves looked really good. He had a sack early. I don't know how many pressures in the game, but he's a guy who, again, doesn't maybe have the wingspan that a guy like AJ Epinesa had or has. But Aaron Graves is powerful. He's cut already at the high school level, and he's only going to get better once he gets here. I can see Iowa, just watching the game, it's easy to see how Iowa's, I would say they're going to do the same thing they did with Epinesa, run him inside, run him outside. I think he's going to play as a freshman. I didn't see as much from Nwankpa, but he's going to play as a freshman. I'll be shocked if Nwankpa doesn't play. He's enrolling early this spring. And he's going to have an opportunity with Belton gone, with Kerner gone. I know Henry Marquez didn't play a lot on defense, but he's a defensive back who's leaving, we assume. So he's going to have an opportunity to play right now, even if it's just on special teams. But I bet you he gets, by the end of the season, he's a regular guy on defense. Maybe not a starter. I would guess he will be starting, but I could be totally wrong. It's not often that we're predicting what will happen with a 5-star defensive back in Iowa. But again, I thought both guys looked good today, and Aaron Graves really stood out just for his his attacking mindset defensively. And again, we watched Aaron Graves at the Southeast Valley level, which I believe is Class 2A. It's hard to evaluate a kid like that when he's just dominating every play. And we watched him play against high school All-Americans this afternoon, and he looked great. He looked great, and again, he's only going to get better. So sky's the limit for Aaron. He will not be enrolling early, but he'll be there this fall. But it was excellent to see. It was great to see Nwankpa and Graves during the All-American Bowl. And if you missed that, you can probably watch it back on Peacock. So if you have the Peacock app, watch that game back and just watch 68's motor, because his motor has been something that stood out to me, despite the fact that he's been playing night in and night out against lesser competition. I was really impressed with Aaron Graves. And you're welcome to call in and share your thoughts as well. Again, 515-635-1601 if you watched the All-American Bowl or All-American game, whatever it's called. Hawkeye Howard, I had time to think about things. To me, Kirk Ferentz does not like quarterbacks moving around and running, and thinks. I think, again, he views mobility at times as a risk. Now, he has recruited mobile guys, Peyton Manziel being an example, but you notice Peyton Manziel never really played. So you might be onto something there. Appreciate that comment from Hawkeye Howard. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello,
Lomanski.
caller. Who is this?
Lomanski from Tomah, Wisconsin.
How are you, Lomanski?
Good. I'm worried about you, Corey. You look pretty stressed about this portal quarterback situation, so I'm worried about you. I think maybe what we have to cling to is that we have competition in the quarterback room with our existing people, and I hope the Iowa press will ask the tough questions about what's going on in the quarterback room next year, because I think we need to have fresh looks at everybody vying for a job, and I think that's going to be more of a possibility than clinging to that they're looking for someone in the portal.
They've only got 3 scholarship quarterbacks as of right now heading into the spring, and if Padilla were to transfer, that's 2. So, I mean, I think they need more competition, to be frank.
I agree with that. I guess what I'm trying to allude to is that I'm afraid we're gonna have to live with what we got. And I like Spaghetti Factory's comment about this is the college version of Minnesota Vikings and not having a balanced offense. You know, the Vikings and offense is lacking. Now, of course, you don't have a year in CBS reporting that Zimmer's going to get fired, but it's tough to have 2/3 of the equation intact, and we need all 3 phases to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's not basketball, right? Like it's so easy to look at Iowa basketball and say, why the heck can't they get better at defense? Now, you have assistant coaches, and I would hope that Fran McCaffrey at some point would say, okay, we need to hire a defensive specialist. He's not done that, but I would hope he would do that. But with football, you've got, I think you just brought up, you literally have 3 teams in one. So if the offense isn't getting any better, that's the problem I have with people who say, well, you can't fire Brian. They just won 10 games. They won 10 games in spite of the offense. I mean, it's very simple. If that unit's not getting it done, you have to look at that unit individually. Isolate that one unit and say, okay, who's performing well from a coaching standpoint? How's Ken O'Keefe doing? How's Brian Ferentz doing? How's Kelton Copeland doing? How's Liddell Betts doing? You don't just lump it all together and say, well, we won 10 games. We're going to move on with our staff. That's not how it works. And that's not how it should work from a personnel standpoint as far as the roster is concerned either at quarterback. You can't just say, well, we won 10 games. We're not going to make a change at quarterback. You won 10 games in spite of quarterback play.
Yeah, and early you mentioned you stuck up for C.J. Beathard. I'm glad you did that because C.J. Beathard, he had relatives in the NFL executive positions, and he had a lot of options. So I'm glad you mentioned C.J. Beathard. I think he was underappreciated at Iowa. He was a
I got to ask you this question. If C.J. Beathard were here, okay, now they won 10 games. They went 10-4 with C.J. Does Iowa win more than 10 games with CJ? I think there's no question there. I don't. Now you can say Purdue and Wisconsin were a lot better, but man, CJ had a knack for making. He was a playmaker. He's as much of a playmaker as you're probably going to get at Iowa.
I would say they have 2 more wins at a minimum.
Well, you're talking, if you have 2 more wins, you're talking about either a Big Ten championship and a playoff berth, or at least a bowl win and 1 less loss in the regular season. You're talking about a 12-2 season potentially.
And people are talking about, the big name quarterbacks in the portal. I think there could be a statement talking about, let's just get a quarterback. Let's just go get a quarterback in the portal that maybe have an upgrade and make the competition at a higher level. Like, what the hell is wrong with that? I mean, the guys that are in the quarterback room now on scholarship cannot be threatened about competition. They've been through high school. So you bring in a guy that might be better. I mean, they can't.
Who cares if they're threatened who cares if Petrus and Padilla are threatened by competition?
Yeah.
Who cares?
And if you can get a guy like C.J. Beathard to come to Iowa, I'm sure there's some quarterback out there, even if it isn't the big name, like the Tennessee quarterback that left Tennessee. There's got to be somebody out there that can increase the competition in the quarterback room. I fail to believe there's nobody out there like that.
Well, the one guy that I'm vying for, and I saw Mark Rogers posted about him earlier, is the kid from Washington State. I just popped it up on the screen here. Jayden DeLora. Now, again, people say, why would you recruit him? They don't have a chance. How do we know we don't have a chance until you go contact the kid? So 2021 stats, he was the Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. He threw for over 2,800 yards, 23-9 touchdown to interception ratio, 145 passer rating. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. And keep in mind, the only reason he's transferring, from what it sounds like, is it sounds like Washington State incarnate Word quarterback Cameron Ward will be headed to Washington State. And so DeLora saw the writing on the wall. This kid just won Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year at quarterback. That's really hard to do. Not quarterback of the year, Offensive Freshman of the Year. and the kid can sling it, and he's mobile.
You know what you got to hope for, Corey? That some big donor from in around Iowa City that really gives a lot of money watches your program, and you get them to like make a phone call.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, you might when you go to sleep at night. Hope say that's going to happen. You'll sleep a lot better that could happen.
Maybe they'll make a big donation to me, and we'll be really happy.
I'll hang up and listen to the rest of your show. I appreciate the time.
Appreciate it, sir. Have a great night. And yeah, I mean, he makes a valid point. The donors and the people that are buying season tickets, those are the ones that are going to speak. Ain't nobody care what I have to say on this show. Like, the coaches don't care what I have to say on this show. All right. And I try to be respectful and be balanced with my approach, but I'm also going to be critical because the offense deserves criticism. That's the bottom line. Oatmeal for life. Kirk brings in transfers for positions outside of quarterback. Yep, you're right. James Butler at running back. Van Valkenburg D-line. Jack Heflin. Cody Ince. Well, Cody Ince, I don't believe Cody Ince was a transfer. I could be wrong. I don't believe he was a transfer. Xavier Williams from UNI. You're right. He brought in Matt Quarles from New Mexico at receiver a couple of years ago, which didn't really work out. Charlie Jones is from Buffalo. Yeah, it's not like they're just anti-portal. I've never used that term, but I think they're very reluctant to go to the portal. And they've even brought up, I think it was Tyler Barnes, recruiting coordinator and Kirk's son-in-law, that Iowa's more apt to go after a group of 5 or an FCS kid because they don't believe they can get the Power 5 kids. And that's, I mean, I'm kind of paraphrasing, of course, but he basically said on signing day, Tyler Barnes said, most of these kids know where they're going when they enter the portal. There's tampering going on. And I'm sure there is tampering going on. But again, that's not an excuse for not reaching out. You're telling me that every quarterback that we just listed and it's been in the portal and succeeded at a Power 5 level, every quarterback knows where they're going before they enter? That's ridiculous. And that's an insult. That's an insult to the schools that are nabbing these quarterbacks. That's an absolute insult to the schools that are actually getting commitments from these top quarterbacks. I don't believe that for a second. All right. Let me open the line back up here. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. D-Dub. Kirk said both quarterbacks give us a chance to win. Went with just one in the Citrus Bowl. Inexcusable, in my mind, in my opinion. 3 points in the first half. Should have put Padilla in the second half. Kind of a contradiction on Kirk's comment. Remember, every time Alex has played, Kirk has made a point of saying, well, Spencer's banged up. Every time. So it's not instilled any confidence in Alex, right? And then you go through bowl prep and Alex doesn't even get a snap. That's why I'm surprised that Alex is still here. Maybe Alex believes he'll win the spot next year. But man, I don't believe he's been given a fair shot. What we've seen during regular season, there is not this big gap. And I agree with this comment and this user here. To me, bowl game is a perfect opportunity to play both guys. You're playing with house money. Play both guys. Good to see you here, Brian. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, again, I the Cody Sokol thing, Vincent, I understand where you're coming from. Cody was very successful at Louisiana Tech, but so was Beathard, so was Jake Rudock. Lee says, no one quality in the portal is going to a school if they are not starting. Well, again, Iowa's quarterback play has been really, really bad. And I'm trying to use, again, respectful language. I'm not going to say, I've seen a lot of terms, vulgar terms, and I'm not going to go. I don't want to make it personal. Iowa's quarterback play has been near the bottom of the Big Ten and one of the worst in the country. Okay. So I think it would be pretty clear that if you go get somebody like Jayden DeLora, Bo Nix, Keaton Slovis, any of the guys that have been in and now out of the portal, that these guys should be able to feel like they're starting as long as they don't screw something up, right? And if Iowa's not comfortable making that clear to a transfer portal quarterback, then shame on us. But again, you can't even assume that Iowa has been turned down by anybody because I haven't heard that Iowa's contacted anybody. Like, I don't think there are conversations going on behind the scenes. Well, do you want to come to Iowa? Well, am I going to start? Well, no, you're going to have to compete. Well, I don't want to come if I got to compete. Those conversations, I mean, first of all, everybody has to compete. I don't care what school you're at. Now, you can say Casey Thompson's a shoo-in to start at Nebraska. Bo Nix is a shoo-in to start at Oregon. Maybe that's the case. But again, if you screw up and you don't prove your worth, it's not just a given that you're going to play. All right. And I think most quarterbacks like Delora, you're telling me he's not the odds-on favorite to start if he were to commit to Iowa this month. He would be the odds-on favorite to start this fall, as he should be. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Tim.
Hey, Tim.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. Hey, what do you think about that Cooper? Isn't he a quarterback there from a high school in Iowa there that Iowa got for commit?
Cooper DeJean?
Yeah.
He's running a defensive back.
In high school?
Did he run at quarterback in high school? Probably. Yeah, I think you're right. But he's not playing quarterback here. He projects as a safety. I know he played a little corner during the Citrus Bowl, but they're not moving him. He's pretty solid, I think, at safety right now.
Right.
That's an interesting thought. They do have some former quarterbacks. Heck, Joe Evans was a former quarterback here in Ames. So,
Sure.
But that's even. Can you imagine Iowa doing that? That would be. We're talking about the transfer portal being out of Kirk's comfort zone. Can you imagine them trying to switch a kid? We've seen Iowa switch like Marvin McNutt. They switch him from quarterback to wide receiver. Can you imagine them doing the opposite? That would be hard for me to believe.
Right. Yeah, we need to do anything, but
yeah, to me right now, the options are you either figure out a way to keep Alex here and find a way to develop him. And again, you want to develop Spencer while you're at it, but if you just sit on what you have here and you make no changes, you're gonna have a similar result offensively. And believe me, those numbers, and I'm gonna read them after I get off the phone with you, sir. The numbers offensively for the regular season and the Big Ten championship game. I haven't crunched the numbers yet for the Citrus Bowl, but the numbers are putrid offensively. That's a fact, whether you want to defend Kirk or not.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. And then we're losing what? Of course, Tyler is turning pro. Linderbaum's turning pro. Shots turning pro, and we're gonna have to rebuild the offensive line too, aren't we?
Well, nothing official from Tyler yet. I would be very surprised if he returns. But Schott, you're right. He's gone. Kelly Martin's gone. Jack Kerner's gone. Dane Belton's gone. I think they'll be fine at defensive back. But yeah, they've got some work to do on the offensive line. I think they're fine on personnel. They had they did a great job in that class of 2021. But you're right. There are going to be some pieces. And guys like Cody Ince and Justin Britt, they've got to step up because those guys have been in the program 3+ years now. They've got to secure those 2 guard spots, in my opinion.
I agree.
All right, sir. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, Tim. Have a great night. Appreciate you calling.
You bet.
All right. Nick, did Caleb Williams commit somewhere? No. And I haven't brought him up. Maybe I brought him up once. But the bottom line is I don't see that as a feasible option. Now, let's run through our options that are currently available. All right. So I'm going to take our caller line, our call system off for just a moment. All right. So if you're wondering if you're kind of out of touch with the transfer portal as far as quarterbacks are concerned as of January 8th, let's run through the guys who are still available. All right. These are players that, to me, Iowa should at least be showing interest in. I'm not saying every guy would be a fit. All right. But at least, again, given how porous the offense has been, and I believe quarterback play specifically, these are guys that Iowa should at least be interested in at this point. So the first one, of course, is Caleb Williams. I don't think Iowa has any chance to grab Caleb Williams, but again, that's one thing that I like about Fran McCaffrey at Iowa. He has went for a lot of 4 or 5-star kids. He's missed a lot, but who cares? If you miss, at least you went down swinging. They've got a connection with Bob Stoops. I mean, again, as I put up here, Caleb has stated publicly his desire to transfer to a school with a pedigree of developing quarterbacks into NFL products. So it's highly unlikely that he would ever consider Iowa. But again, it does not hurt to reach out. Jayden DeLora, starter at Washington State. Kind of a smaller guy, 6 foot tall, just under 200 pounds. But this year he was named Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year, 64% completion percentage, over 2,800 passing yards, a 23-9 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 145 passer rating. He's got 3 years of eligibility remaining. Taisun Phommachanh, backup at Clemson. Now, why would they go after a backup? Well, he was behind DJ. I don't try to pronounce his last name, but of course, DJ was a Heisman at one time. I wouldn't say a favorite. I think Spencer Rattler would probably take the cake there, but he was a Heisman favorite heading into this year. Clemson didn't quite have the year they expected to have, although they won 10 games. But Taisun was stuck behind DJ and didn't play great when he came in for relief. But again, limited action that we saw him in. He was a 4-star kid out of high school, played high school ball with Nico Reganey. Iowa offered him, Ken O'Keefe offered him during the class of 2019, that cycle. They offered him. He's got 2 years, I believe 2 years of eligibility remaining. And with the COVID year and all that going into, the extra year available, I could be off a year somewhere on a couple of these kids, but this is the information I was able to uncover. But again, Phommachanh would be a kid I would be interested in if I'm Iowa. Jarret Doege. Now, West Virginia fans would laugh at this because it sounds like there was a lot of fans that wanted Doege gone anyways. Now, he did throw for 65% completion percentage, over 3,000 yards this year, 19 to 12 touchdown to interception ratio, and a 136 passer rating. He's got 1 year of eligibility remaining. So he started off at Bowling Green. He went to West Virginia, and now he's got 1 year left. So as far as a timing, if you have confidence in a guy like Labus, Carson May, and Marco Lainez, this would be a good gap filler, right? Potentially. He was a starter at West Virginia. They were a bowl team. At least, I'm not saying it would be a huge upgrade, but man, I'd have to think it's an upgrade from what Iowa is currently dealing with. Braxton Burmeister, another one we mentioned earlier, at Virginia Tech. Just a 56% completion percentage during his 2021 year. He started off at Oregon, transferred to Virginia Tech, also threw for just under 2,000 passing yards, a 14-4 touchdown to interception ratio. But he also ran for 521 yards, had 2 touchdowns on the ground, had 1 touchdown receiving, has 1 year of eligibility remaining as a graduate transfer. Again, it's someone that Iowa should at least look at. John Rhys Plumlee. This is a more far-fetched one. Quarterback and wide receiver during his time with the Rebels from 19 to 21. Just under 1,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing, and just under 300 yards receiving. Has 2 years of eligibility remaining. He is a real athlete. I don't see John Rhys Plumlee ever coming to Iowa. I think Kirk Ferentz would probably be very uncomfortable with how Plumlee plays, but the dude is an athlete. And heck, if he doesn't work out at quarterback, Iowa could certainly use an athlete like that at wide receiver, but he is in the portal as well. So the top guys right now, this is the guy I'd be targeting. If I'm Iowa, he entered the portal yesterday. I would be doing everything I could to get him on campus. I would be pulling out all the stops. And if he's not interested, then I would be going after Taisun Phommachanh. Now, Phommachon's been in the portal for, I think, well over a month. So if Iowa hasn't reached out to him by now, then that ship has probably sailed. And I've heard nothing to tell me that they have reached out to him. But this is the name, and I'm not going to get my hopes up on this, or I don't want to get anybody else's hopes up. But you watch this kid. He is mobile. He can spin the ball. He is a weapon. All right? He is a weapon. He did not get run out from Washington State. Their coach got fired midseason. Sounds like they're bringing in the kid from Incarnate Word to play quarterback. Jayden DeLaura is a kid I would be all over if I was this coaching staff looking into the portal and looking for a way to improve my offense. No question about it. All right. We'll open the phone lines back up. 515-635-1601. 515-635-1601. Murillo Family Fishing. Using the NFL success data is a tricky way to work this topic. Quarterback has to get into the right team system and be lucky enough to have success as well. All the Bama QBs aren't blowing up the NFL. Fair point. Mac Jones looks pretty darn good. So does Tua Tagovailoa, but I understand your point. Yeah, Nick, Caleb Williams has not recommitted to OU. He could. I doubt it now with Gabriel there, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he will. But again, I have not seen anything to tell me that he would recommit to Oklahoma, and they're dealing with a coaching change as well. Professor Beardtastic, love the username. In the Kirk Ferentz era, I don't know of any quarterbacks that we actually developed. Successful ones had the qualities coming into the room, and quarterback coaching did nothing to elevate the ceiling. Fair point. I can't argue it. Again, I don't know how to really substantiate that claim because I don't think just purely statistics tell the story of QB development. But I think that's a fair claim to make. And that's why I'm excited about a guy like Marco Lainez, because he's got the intangibles. But again, he's not going to be here till 23. Ray says, Deuce's parents have a video of him up on YouTube running offense during an Iowa practice. They had to be pissed at Kirk. I was upset by the comments. You know, Kirk, I know, apologized for them. But the bottom line is I think that bridge was burned at that point. Lee, replacing Petrus takes the pressure off the Brian Ferentz issue. At least that's a valid point. At least for a year, it could potentially stem the tide of that. But does it really matter? I mean, again, unless the people who are paying for season tickets, the donors, unless they're the ones pushing for change, it probably doesn't matter. Yeah, Steve, I know you're repeating what Tyler Barnes said. Most of these guys knew where they were going before they entered the portal. That's just what Tyler Barnes said. Maybe that's true, but again, I would like someone to prove that because I don't believe that's the case. Are we really saying that Indiana tampered with Connor Bazelak? I mean, are we going to make that claim? Maybe they did, but there have been so many guys that have come out and found homes. I find it very hard to believe that everyone was tampered with. But I understand you're repeating what Tyler Barnes said, and that is a claim that he made. Michael, can we get Kirk on the line and see what is going on? My number is right there, 515-635-1601. All right. Email Kirk Ferentz and get him on the line. I'd be happy to talk with him. Would love to talk to him. Erica, Deuce's parents should bury the hatchet already. Kirk was wrong to have made the comment he did, but seriously. Yeah. I mean, it's at this point, it'd be in Deuce's best interest to move on. I'm frustrated by the fact that Iowa lost him. He's now got a chance at Kentucky. So, yeah, it would be better for him to be able to move on. Gold Sabertooth, is there any true rumblings about a portal quarterback for Iowa? No rumblings. The only rumblings that I've heard recently have been from me and from Mark Rogers trying to create rumblings, right? Because now Mark Rogers, he's not trying to create rumblings about Iowa, but he acknowledges what everybody else acknowledges, that Iowa has a desperate need at quarterback. And I think he agrees with me that it's foolish to even make a statement, to even infer that Iowa doesn't need immediate help at that position. That is just, I don't know if that's just being a uber Kirk homer. You're not being disloyal to Kirk Ferentz when you say Iowa should go to the portal at quarterback. That's not being disloyal. The guy's getting paid millions of dollars a year to do the job he's doing, and the quarterback position is not in a good enough place. So it's a fair point to make. And Gold Sabertooth Tiger, or I guess Gold Sabertooth, I'm assuming you're a Tiger, no rumblings. Have heard nothing at this point. John Morrow, it is not going to happen, but if Petrus and Padilla enter the portal, who would you want or take then? That shows the problem. Again, Delora, they're not both entering the portal, right? But Delora would be a ends up getting fortunate. If Padilla announces he's transferring in a week, maybe somebody enters in a week or so. But I just don't think that's likely. Again, most of these guys have been picked over at this point, but there are a couple of candidates that are still worth looking at long and hard. I would hope that Iowa's doing that, but I'm not confident in the fact. I don't believe that Iowa's doing that, for the record. Kirk isn't Hayden. He can't not develop coaches to become head coaches, which shows our development problems in its athletes. Steve, Kirk really wants to justify taking Petrus over Zach Wilson. You can't justify that, Steve. You cannot justify that. They will never be able to justify that. Now, you can say it's just how recruiting works, that BYU was able to grab Zach Wilson, but Spencer Petrus is never going to be a better quarterback than Zach Wilson. Bottom line. Erica, what do you think will happen with Labus? I hope that he develops and is the next great quarterback in Iowa. I think it's possible, but I haven't seen him. Like everybody's talking about, Joey Labus is the next guy. That's just because of hype and rumors and all the stuff that we hear out of practice. I'm not at practice. 99.9% of people who are on social media talking about Labus are not at practice. They're just repeating what they heard, and what they hear. I hope he's the next great thing, but I haven't seen it yet. And right now he's third on the depth chart. So I hope that happens, but have no reason to think that will. Dustin, can we all agree that Kirk trusts the defense more than the offense and will rely on defense more than a quarterback? Absolutely. That is 100% true. And it's great that Iowa has a defense that you can lean on. Believe me, if you didn't have Phil Parker and you didn't have LeVar Woods coaching the special teams unit, man, Iowa would be struggling to hit 500 year in and year out. I mean, this offense has not been really doing much of anything to help Iowa's cause to win 9 to 10 games in a year, which they have been doing recently. So yeah, you're absolutely right on that. The defense is there's no question about it. The defense is really the only defense and special teams. That's your pillar of strength at Iowa, and it's going to be that way under Kirk Ferentz. You don't need this offense to be elite. You need this offense to be able to carry you enough, right? 2015, perfect example. The offense wasn't elite, but you had a playmaking quarterback, and what do you know? I know they had a favorable schedule. You go 12-0, all right? And perhaps if you have better receivers, who knows? I mean, I'm not saying they were overmatched in that Rose Bowl, but the receiver room was depleted. I think Iowa's receiver room is in a good spot with Keegan Johnson, Arlen Bruce, Charlie Jones potentially coming back. All right. See a lot of comments of people. Yeah, I understand the caller earlier who brought up the racial issue at quarterback. Probably just a troll. And I was done with the conversation, and I appreciate everybody calling him out for it. It's not an issue of race, so it's a ridiculous conversation to even have. And yes, Spencer, the 2023 quarterback Marco Lainez, I'm assuming he's Hispanic, but I don't know that. I don't know Marco. I've never actually had a conversation with Marco. I'd love to get him on our show, on our podcast at some point. But yeah, the race is not an issue as far as Iowa's quarterback problems. All right. Taking a while to get through all these comments about our caller earlier. Our line is open. 515-635-1601. We're here for a while longer. So again, appreciate the Outlaw Josie Wells reminding everybody, if you haven't already done so, please hit the like button on this video. Please hit the subscribe button. All right. 42 likes right now. Please help us get that number up. We're trying to grow this channel, and we were able to get well over 1,000 subs for the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel. Now we're trying to do it here at this channel. And I promise you, after we get to 1,000 subscribers on this channel, we'll stop bugging everybody. But please help us get to 1,000 subs here. We've got a couple hundred to go. So tell your friends, tell everybody you know if you can. I would sure appreciate it. I try not to pander for subscribers, but would certainly appreciate everybody sharing this show out on social media. And again, if you have not already subscribed, if you're one of the 100 who are on here right now listening, please subscribe to our channel. It would really, really be appreciated. It would very much help. Mario Family Fishing, appreciate this compliment. I do my best, and I'm trying to stay respectful to our callers. Kurt, predictable play calling with 0 ounce of creativity. Absolutely fair. Hank, Corey, it's not the quarterback confidence level. It was the O-line confidence level. Well, Hank, what I saw in that bowl game was a more than adequate offensive line. All right. Now, I think pass protection is still something that needs some work, but I did not see good quarterback play in the Citrus Bowl, Hank. I didn't. I saw a lot of missed throws, and I didn't see any uptick in quarterback play. When Spencer has had protection, and he has had protection at times, I have not seen much of a difference in quarterback play. I'm not saying offensive line wasn't a problem this year, Hank. I promise you I'm not claiming that. But I do believe they have the personnel to fix that. But there are multiple problems. I keep saying it over and over again. Multiple problems require multiple solutions, and this offense has multiple problems. Okay? Quarterback play is one. Offensive line play is another. I think clock management is another big one. Game management's a big one. Play calling's a big one. Predictability. There are lots of problems. But I think a couple of the biggest problems are what you just mentioned. Quarterback play and offensive line play. And I don't believe Iowa is developing quarterbacks or has shown they don't have the reputation. Iowa doesn't have the reputation of developing quarterbacks. They actually have a pretty good reputation at developing offensive lines. They don't have, I think there's this faulty thinking that people have that Iowa's offensive lines are typically great. That's such a ridiculous comment to make. If you look at the numbers, Iowa rarely has an adequate run game. Very rarely. Now, they produce great individuals. Brandon Scherf, Marshall Yonda, Robert Gallery, Tristan Wirfs, Alaric Jackson. Now it's Tyler Linderbaum, James Daniels. You go on the list, right? But as far as units are concerned, Iowa does not typically develop great units. But quarterback play, I haven't seen significant development ever under Kirk Ferentz. So, again, I'm not trying to insult Kirk. Some guys are just, I would hope that we'd have a quarterback coach that could do a better job of that. But regardless, the option, the solution for this year, I don't see much of a solution unless Joey Labas comes out of nowhere and is just lighting the world on fire, other than the transfer portal. And it's still there, and there are still options, and that's why we're talking this evening. Bora Rim, they're winning football games. That's like why Kirk Ferentz won't make a change. If Christensen was winning games in 07, he would not have made a change to Stanzi in 08. But Bora Rim, I'm going to argue with you on this. And I'm not saying you're supporting that, and you might be right, but that's such a faulty way of looking, again, at a football team. You've got three units. You've got your offense, you've got your defense, you got your special teams. Right now, Iowa is winning 10 games. They won 10 games this year. They won 10 games in 19. And really, I shouldn't even bring 19 up because I thought quarterback play was okay with Nate Stanley. I don't think Nate Stanley was ever terrific, but it was okay. But they won 6 games last year in an 8-game season and 10 games this year, in spite of the offense, in spite of quarterback play. So if you look at it, and Don Patterson has made the statement. This isn't me bringing this up. Even Don has said this on the show. It is possible to win in spite of your quarterback. Quarterbacks often get way too much credit for wins and way too much blame for losses. And I believe that's exactly what has happened at Iowa these last couple of seasons. Jarret, Ken O'Keefe and Brian Ferentz aren't the answer. Fair comment, fair opinion. So far, I certainly wouldn't give those guys a very high grade. CJ, I agree. I clearly remember a 3rd and 21 Stanley hit against ISU to win the game. I remember the exact play you're talking about. Now, it didn't happen a lot, but it sure happened a lot more than anything we've seen with Spencer Petras. Hank, hey, Corey, you missed the Kenny Pickett slide. You're more out of touch than our coaching staff. What are we talking about here, Hank? Last time I checked, Kenny Pickett played for Pittsburgh. What does that have to do with development here at Iowa? The last time I checked, Ken O'Keefe was not developing Kenny Pickett. So Ken O'Keefe and this Iowa offense is in charge of developing the quarterbacks that are on its roster. That's Alex Padilla, Spencer Petras, Joey Labas, and it was Deuce Hogan. If these guys don't know how to slide, that's on Ken O'Keefe and Brian Ferentz. That's not on anybody else. That's on those guys. I understand you're apologizing for the coaching staff, but there's no excuse for your quarterback not to know how to slide, Hank. There's no excuse. I don't care what Kenny Pickett did. That's got nothing to do with Iowa. All right? Erica, Ken O'Keefe is the highest paid quarterbacks coach in the country. Does anyone else think that's ridiculous? I have said the same thing. I think it's ridiculous that he's making that much. I'm not saying he should be fired. I don't think he's right now. The job success is not matching up with the dollar amount, right? It's just not. Kurt, we need 1 year worth of help out of the portal. Absolutely. I wouldn't, again, if I know a lot of people on here, maybe new to listening to my show, I have never, ever lobbied for Iowa to go after a transfer portal quarterback. Never. I've never, ever lobbied for it. Now, I know the portal is more prominent now than ever before. I'm not just saying it because I say it every year. That's not how it works. There's a need. The portal is full. It's overflowing. It's been overflowing. Use it. I like this comment from Steve. Kansas State signed a portal quarterback without an offensive coordinator. I saw, is it Colin Klein? I think it's Colin Klein, the former Heisman runner-up for Kansas State, is now the OC. And yeah, they were able to grab Adrian Martinez despite not knowing who their offensive coordinator was. All right. Murillo Family Fishing says, Erica, I do not find the fact that Ken O'Keefe is the highest paid quarterbacks coach in the country as ridiculous. I am highly paid, and it is not all performance related or based upon who I have trained and developed, but also based upon my experience and certifications. Okay, so my question to that is, you're saying that a person should be paid according to not just performance, but upon experience and certifications. I don't care what your experience level is, though. If you're not doing your job well enough, like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who is doing. I mean, let's take a perfect example. Take a look at what happened with Mark Turgeon at Maryland. Perfect example. Mark Turgeon was the head coach at Maryland forever, for as long as I can remember at that program. And they were upset with him. Fans were upset with him. Students were upset with him. It's not like they were tanking. Maryland was still a respectable program, but there was backlash. It didn't matter how long he'd been there. If you're not getting the job done, you either need to be removed from your position or at least take a salary cut. I'm not saying that Ken O'Keefe deserves to be making $50,000 a year, but I'm saying he's making $650,000 a year. He's the number one paid quarterbacks coach in the country. Don't you think if you're the if you're the highest paid person at your position, that should probably translate into results? And are we arguing the fact that are we trying to convince ourselves that quarterback play has been near best in the country? I mean, think about that. Are we really going to say that Iowa's quarterback play has been near best in the country? Again, experience has something to do with it, but we're talking $600-some thousand. $600-some thousand. All right. Murillo Family Fishing, another question. I hate answering questions with questions, but who would you rather see as the top paid quarterback coach in the NCAA? Who should we go get? I have no idea. I have got some potential candidates that I would, if Ken O'Keefe steps away, I have a couple guys that I would feel comfortable naming. But here's what I'll say. A, it's not my job to go find a quarterback's coach, but I, just like anybody, has the right to look at the situation and say, you're not performing up to snuff, up to what you're getting paid to perform as far as development. It's his job, right? It's his job to develop quarterbacks. So I'm not even implying that Ken O'Keefe should be fired. But the bottom line is, if you're making that much money, the results got to be there. So I'm not claiming to have all the answers as far as who Iowa needs to go out and hire or what Ken O'Keefe's salary should be. I just don't believe that it should be number one in the country for his position when you see a lack of production at that position. That's all I'm saying. And I have nothing against Ken O'Keefe. I like Ken O'Keefe, but I do find that ridiculous. And I'm just speaking my mind on that. Kurt, we need to upgrade our NIL game and support. Sounds like schools have 5 to 7 person departments supporting NIL. You could be right. It's hard. I'm sure it's hard being in Iowa City and trying to compete with these bigger market schools, but certainly it's not going away either. NIL is a part of college football now. Do you think the Deuce Hogan transfer hurt Iowa's quarterback room? Absolutely, it hurt their quarterback room. It's one less guy to compete. It's one less guy to push Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla and Joey Labus. So absolutely, until Iowa can figure out a way to supplement that quarterback room, that Deuce Hogan transfer is not a good thing, in my opinion. Kurt Yedlick, bringing in a portal quarterback does not mean they automatically start. If Petras or Padilla are confident, Why not a little competition? Amen. Nwankpa could start in Belton's spot. Absolutely. Could see that. Spencer says, I think Drew Tate would be a great replacement for Ken O'Keefe. I know he is coaching. I believe he's a quarterback's coach at a smaller school. I don't know if Drew Tate would be interested in that or if Kirk Ferentz would be interested in Drew Tate. Certainly he knows the position. It's got to be the right fit. There are guys out there. Italicus, could see Stanzi as a quarterback's coach. Stanzi's an interesting guy. Maybe. I wouldn't be shocked by that. Michael says we need to play someone good in the non-conference. They get South Dakota State. They get Iowa State next year. And they get Nevada. So, I mean, Iowa State will probably be down a bit. You're going to get them in Kinnick. South Dakota State is a good FCS team, but it is an FCS team. And then Nevada lost Jay Norvell, former Hawkeye. So, yeah, I mean, there's going to be, you're never going to get a gauntlet of a non-conference schedule when you're playing non-conference games. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Hello? Can you hear me, caller? Hello? Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? All right, he's gone. Call us back. If you had a problem hearing us, feel free to give us a call back. Courtney Ralph, how long do you think Padilla will wait to transfer? If he didn't think he would play, why wouldn't he already be in there? Good question. I don't know. Maybe Alex knows something we don't. Maybe Alex is convinced that he's going to win the job in the spring or the fall. That's a risky move. It's also a risky move to enter the portal, Courtney, because there's lots of quarterbacks out there and a lot of backup quarterbacks out there that are going to have to, like Deuce Hogan, either walk on somewhere or drop down a level. So Alex I think he's probably smart to stay here. I just wouldn't blame him if he left. But I do agree. The longer you wait, the less options are likely that will likely be available. And he could transfer after the spring. That's always possible. That's absolutely possible. All right, here we go. We got Mark Rogers in our chat. Appreciate this, Mark. Consider all the quarterbacks that have been in the portal since the end of the season and now off the board. Calzada, Thompson, Slovis, Penix, Nix, Rattler, Max Johnson, Gabriel, and more. Absolutely. It's just ridiculous. And Iowa hasn't been attached to one. Not one. Not one report of Iowa showing interest in any of them. Not one. And if you have a report that I've missed, please throw it up in the chat. I'd love to read the report, whatever it is. Even if it's just a tweet, just let me know. I'd love to hear it. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
How's it going?
I'm doing all right. I'm assuming you heard your brother's call earlier.
Actually, I did not. He had messaged me and said that you were on, but I was trying to catch how the Graves did and Nwankpa did. You have any updates with that stuff? You said I was kind of catching the tail end of it. I guess they were playing pretty well. Yeah,
talked a little bit about it earlier. I know Aaron had a sack early. I actually missed the first quarter and had to watch part of it back. But, the big thing I was looking for is you've got Aaron Graves, who's been playing against 2A competition at Southeast Valley, finally playing against the type of competition he's going to be playing against in the Big Ten to a degree. And I thought he looked great. He doesn't have the wingspan that an AJ Epinesa has or had, but I think they can play him inside, outside. He's got great power. I mean, the dude is just like a bodybuilder. He looks like he could be the next WWE candidate. And we're talking about a kid who's a senior in high school. So, man, once he gets in the weight room, I don't even know what he can do in the weight room. I mean, he just looks huge. So I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play right away. Who knows how effective he'll be, but I think Iowa needs a dynamic pass rusher, and I think Aaron Graves can be just that.
And that was an All-America game, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I'm about to catch up on that. I didn't have a chance to look at it.
Yeah, I think it's available. I would guess it's available on Peacock because it was on NBC. So if you download the Peacock app, you should be able to watch it back. I'm assuming.
Well, I'll touch base a couple of the things that I was hearing. I know I listened to your guys' show yesterday after the Iowa game. No, what was it? Thursday, excuse me. Anyway, as far as Xavier, I do see him possibly coming in, and at least with Dane Belton's departure, having some type of impact on that position. I thought maybe he would be more geared towards safety, and with Kerner leaving, but I know that Schulte, who was his
Schulte.
backup, I guess was looking pretty good. Or Schultz, there you go.
No, you're right. Schulte,
good,
Quinn Schulte. Yep.
Yeah, but I could see Xavier doing really well coming in. And I know he's an early enrollee, but having at least a feel for what's going on and then how he plays, and particularly with Phil Parker and how he implements his guys. I could see him coming in, playing some substantial time in that back end, if not with that cash position as well. Another question I had for you, though, is with the D-line and our ends, I actually have talked to my brother about this, with Justin Jacobs and him splitting time, obviously, at the cash position. I could see some, I guess in my eyes, some possible D-end from him. I mean, 6'4", 245-ish, maybe almost 250.
Say who you're talking about again? I missed who you said.
Justin Jacobs.
Playing defensive end?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's an interesting question because he's a big guy. I wonder because I think he's actually pretty good out in space, and I'm not saying he's going to be the next cash guy, but he's pretty good in coverage. Maybe they could run him on the line, but I think Iowa's actually pretty confident with the group of young guys they have on that line right now. Because remember, not only did they get Aaron Graves, they also got 4-star Brian Allen to commit on signing day, and then don't forget Logan Jones. Logan Jones was hurt this year, and I think they're fairly high on him. So I don't know that they have a problem to where they need to convert him. Maybe you're right. Maybe that could happen, but I think they'll be okay. Again, assuming Aaron is what I expect him to be, even his freshman year, I think they've got 6 to 8 guys that they're still comfortable with.
Well, the reason why I bring Justin up is, and I've got no qualms with our defense. I think our defense has played extremely well throughout Phil's tenure with Iowa, but just seeing some of the ends that we have had, whether it's Zach, AJ, you got some big, tall guys, but kind of you were alluding to earlier, some of those speed rushers off the end, which can help with some of our, tackle end stunts, things like that. Just getting pressure, because we've always kind of relied on that 4-man pressure, drop as many guys as we can in the back 7, roll from there. But I was kind of seeing that with Justin and the way he played over obviously the course of the season, but particularly toward the end. Maybe sometime I'm like, one way he would look like at a defensive end. Just let him, get off the quarterback. He doesn't have to worry about coverage. And we play so much cash with Dane this patch. I mean, Justin was in there, but I think it was primarily rundown. But I just was kind of thinking, I talked to my brother about it, thought maybe I'd throw it out there, see what somebody else might think.
That's a good question. And I'm by no means an expert with what goes into converting players. Certainly, a guy like Joe Evans has proven that you don't have to be the biggest to be able to be a fairly effective edge rusher. And I think Joe Evans has gotten better in the run game as well. And he's not a very big guy, probably never going to play on Sundays, but I think, whether it's Justin Jacobs, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we've had those type of guys, whether it was Nate Meyer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Broderick Benz, some of those guys that are those smaller type of guys. I mean, back to was it Howard Hodges for 2002 Orange Bowl. You had some of those guys, but they were getting pressure for us to help our back end. But I was just curious, if anybody else, what their thoughts were on that. Also, I was going to touch with the comment with Ken O'Keefe. Yes, he's extremely overpaid. I saw the comment that you had on the message board, and I guess I'm trying to understand the thought process behind that individual's comment. But I think almost all of us, our jobs are performance based, and then as well as what our pay is, and particularly with what the job that he does. But is he extremely overpaid? Absolutely, particularly for what we're getting. That's how I look at it, and I would agree with you on that for what you were saying. I mean, production on what he has put out there and what he's getting paid, obviously, to me, does not equate. So
yeah, and that's not an attack.
Was,
that's not an attack against Ken O'Keefe. It's just stating the obvious.
Correct. Yep. And even if you have a job where you're paid, $11.75 an hour, you always get your reviews. Your performance is always, rated at some point in time, whether it's, monetarily, however they want to look at it. But yeah, I didn't understand that comment either. But
yeah, no,
I'm trying to think of who else they could possibly bring in. But I don't see them departing from Ken O'Keefe, just as a simple fact of him and Kirk Ferentz's relationship over the past. I think him even being there now is kind of a favorite to Ken O'Keefe. I hate to say it like that, but that's just how I look at it based on their past relationships and where things are at now. And basically what his job is with Brian being the OC, it's kind of like Ken just kind of takes a back seat to things, has some input, but he's still the highest paid quarterbacks coach in the country. But what is he really doing?
I've got an idea or two that I wouldn't mind offering up as far as the quarterback coaching position, but I'm not comfortable stating that until Ken moves on. I don't want to bring that up, but I think he could. I mean, he's 68 years old. I don't know how long he plans on coaching. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, I like the Drew Tate suggestion that was brought up. I don't know if that was you. And as well, quarterback competition, I think, is very, very much needed in that quarterback room. And I don't have any type of ill will towards Spencer Petras either, but I just think he's just not our quarterback. He's just, the way he reads defenses, how he goes through things, predicated on how our offense is, he's just not a fit. I don't know how else to explain to people when you talk with them and who are, backing him up. And we don't know him as a person. We're just strictly going off of how he's been playing quarterback for Iowa, and he's just not that guy.
Well, Chuck, let me say something. One of the biggest frustrating things is when fans try to apologize for Spencer, and they do it in a variety of ways, or they apologize for Kirk and they apologize for Brian because they don't want to accept the fact that Iowa's quarterback play is really bad. Iowa's play calling isn't good. We have no idea what we're doing with clock management. Like, we love Kirk Ferentz. I love Kirk Ferentz. I think he's a great guy.
Yep.
I think he's done a great job here. But like, if we're going to lie to ourselves, then the problems are never going to get fixed. And if coaches who are being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, in Kirk's case, millions of dollars every year, can't deal with a little criticism, then what are we doing here? I mean, that's just crazy. So it's nothing against Kirk personally, or Ken, or anybody. Like I said, I think Ken's a great guy. I've heard nothing but great things about Ken O'Keefe. But it's just I'm just stating it like I see it.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I know there are times where you have those types of situations, and I'm sure that if it comes to it, and Kirk for some reason moves on from Ken, but even with the backing of Spencer, I'm just having a hard time trying to wrap my head around why he is still projected as to being the starting quarterback, why there isn't competition, why we didn't hit the portal to possibly bring somebody in.
There's still time left, Chuck. There's still time left. They can still go to the portal.
Yeah, but I think you and I both know that's just not going to. If they were going to do that and bring somebody in to have any type of competition for this next upcoming season, it's something that they should have done before now.
Well,
and to bring somebody in, this is just my opinion, to bring somebody in too late. Now, granted, there's people out there, but I just think that's not their game plan. I think
all they got to do is
Labus.
All they got to do is get him here before spring. I mean, as far as being too late. So, but you're right. No, I agree with you. I would say there's a 0.5% chance of Iowa going to the portal at quarterback, but I'm holding on to that 0.5 chance because, Chuck, I'm an Iowa fan. I mean, that's just
you and me both.
So, I've just spent the last 2 hours on here ranting about quarterback play because I want them to go to the portal. And maybe you're going to call me crazy because I shouldn't even be talking about it because it's not going to happen. But if there's any chance of it happening, I want to talk about it. And I think there's always a chance because, again, these guys are available, like the kid from Washington State. And the kid, I would think, would fit in really well. I've seen some tape of him at Washington State. And again, he's mobile. He can spin the ball. He actually is not. He was considered a dual threat quarterback out of high school. He basically stayed in the pocket for Washington State this year. He had some rushing yards, but he is a good pocket passer. And there's a reason why he was the offensive freshman of the year in the Pac-12 conference.
Yeah, and I don't know what their philosophy is with their quarterbacks per se. I mean, I know we kind of have it as we can see it, that drop back, pocket passer. I know there was a comment earlier about the racial, disparity on what we have at quarterback, whatever the comment was. I think you're absolutely right. Was totally way off base, but we've never really had that type of a mobile quarterback. I mean, given the fact that a la Drew Tate or Brad Banks, everybody else has been that pocket quarterback. But the only thing I will say about that, and even with C.J. Beathard, I'll even go back to Vandenberg, but right after Stanzi, you had accurate guys. You had guys who could read the defense, but they were at least accurate to that point where they could get that ball out. And that's what we need, in my opinion, as far as how we run our offense. I don't need somebody who can throw it 80 yards down the field, but if they can't get it to, their progressions, and spread the ball around. I mean, I hate watching the Northwestern or Indiana guys that can just, they're accurate. And when they go against us in our defense, you see how they can kind of get that ball down the field. But with us, it's either, play action pass, bootlegs, or we involve the tight ends, which I'm all for. But to me, to evolve to beyond a 10-win season, which I agree with you too, I think we overachieved this year, in my opinion, with what we have and what we had.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
To say that we would have that every year is, it's a mistake. So you have to evolve with that. You have to evolve with not just your offense, your defense, and your players, but in your play calling, but with your players. And that's where Iowa needs to go with it. Because I'm tired of seeing those seasons where you get to a bowl game, and now it seems like we get to a bowl game and lose. At least before, we would get to an Outback Bowl or Alamo Bowl and at least win. But I want to go beyond that. I don't want to sit in the stands with my family like I did this past year at Purdue and predict the play calls from the fans. I'll go down there and grab a headset and take over.
Well,
but
let me just say this. I want to respond to Hank one more time. And Hank obviously doesn't agree with me, but I just want to make this clear. So Hank just says on here, Corey, were you actually at the Citrus Bowl? Spencer made some very good throws. When you then say that quarterback and O-line are the biggest issues, what the heck? Okay, here's the deal. I'm going to put it very simply. I've never claimed that Spencer Petras doesn't make good throws at times. I will say this. I was not at the game, but a certain offensive coordinator who used to coach quarterbacks named Don Patterson was at the game. So, Hank, if you want to ask Don how Spencer performed at the Citrus Bowl, feel free to call us tomorrow night, 7 o'clock over at the Iowa channel, and Don Patterson will be more than fair in answering quarterback play. I figured I'd just put that to rest because, again, don't need to listen to me. Listen to a guy who has coached at the highest level in Don Patterson. So sorry to go on a rant briefly, Chuck, but no. I just wanted to address that.
That's why we have these calls, right? You have that bouncing those thoughts and ideas off it. But I agree. I don't think he might have had a handful of throws that were decent throws, but I mean,
sure.
If I was playing Duck Hunt on Nintendo, I'd have had a field day. With what some of what Spencer was, putting out there. And it's just, and I don't know how. I mean, I can see it in his throwing motion and on how he does, with his dropbacks, with his sets. And it just, to me, that's where I'm like, Ken, why aren't you addressing this? Because I can see it from my couch and my chair, but it's like,
maybe they are addressing it. Maybe they are addressing it, but obviously the solutions, I mean, if they should have been addressing it last year. So however they're addressing it isn't working.
Well, and I know you and I have talked about it too. I mean, I think Padilla needs more of a chance, not just a sample size of what we've seen from him. I think he is an accurate quarterback. I think he is a little bit more mobile. Granted, he doesn't probably have the arm strength, but I think his arm strength is very much adequate. And I would have preferred to see him, if not start the Citrus Bowl, play more than what he did. Not just garbage time, but
he didn't play the Citrus Bowl.
Go.
He didn't even get in. He never got a snap in the Citrus Bowl.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yes, you're right. That's correct. He didn't play any time.
That's what's ridiculous. I mean, isn't that ridiculous?
Done. Yeah, I even said the same thing to my brother when we were watching it because, like they should bring him in with us down by so much. At least see what can be done with him, particularly with our offense and how because we have players coming back next year. I mean, he's a young player. I know Petras is going to be, is he a junior this year? He'll be a senior next year. So, but give him the opportunity, see what you're going to see, do some evaluation. But that's just Kirk, man. He's so hard strong on his loyalty with players. And to a certain point, I get it. But then at other points, you're handicapping yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I have both seen, just from the eye test, we've watched Padilla play. We've watched Petras play. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to ask you as a avid fan, if you were heading into a bowl game right now, say the bowl game is on January 9th, it's tomorrow, based on what you've seen during games, during live game action from Spencer Petras and Alex Padilla, how would you split reps during that bowl game?
My personal opinion, I wouldn't split reps. They would be the majority of them would be with Padilla.
Okay.
That's just me. And why? Because I've seen what Spencer can do over last year's, 6 games or 8 games, the games this year. And at some point in time, you have to just say to yourself, it's not working. I mean, I'm not going to keep trying to put this square peg into a round hole. That's what I feel like Brian and Kirk are doing with Spencer. Kid can give a great interview, and he honestly sounds like Brian when you listen to him and how they interact with the media. But it's like at some point in time, you just have to say it's just not working, you know. But I don't think he's going to transfer because I don't think really anybody else is going to pick up that trash. And I hate to say it, unless he wants to go down to, you know, lower type of competition. But he needs to have better guidance. I heard you say you don't know if it's coaching, which I think you said maybe it is coaching with him. But I just don't see it in him. Not even with his demeanor and how he is. You know, quarterbacks are alpha dog type of people. They go out there. That's what they do. They control that offense. It's their team. That's the type of mantra that they should have. I just don't see it from Spencer. Not that Padilla has a whole bunch of what I've seen, but I rather see what I can see as opposed to getting the same rerun from Spencer.
Well, for the record, I'm not a Spencer Petras hater. I probably would have played, and I probably would have disagreed with you a little bit, Chuck. I would have given Spencer time, but I would have let those guys both get serious. And then you can say, well, that disrupts rhythm. Give me a break. What rhythm are we benefiting from at the quarterback position? Like, I'd be running
with our offense. I agree.
I'd be running both guys. And if you feel more comfortable running one guy in the first quarter, one guy in the second quarter, if you feel more comfortable doing it every other series, every other drive, whatever the case, maybe it's one half and another half. Like, that should have been done. Alex deserved to play in that game. That's just my opinion. He deserved to play. Regardless of how much, he deserved to be on the field.
Do you think our offense, and I'm trying to be obviously the devil's advocate here with Spencer. I know sometimes scheme has a lot to do with how players play. I don't necessarily see it, but if somebody else can say, you know what, the scheme doesn't fit Spencer with how he plays. I didn't see any of his high school tape. I have no idea. You know, he broke records, yada, yada, but what's your opinion on scheme wise? And I know I don't like Iowa's offense and how we have done things under Brian, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think scheme wise, what Kirk wants, it fits into the system, right? You want a game manager who is a pocket passer, is going to be extremely safe with the football. I think he's safe to a fault. That's just my opinion. When you throw the ball away on 4th down, when you're down 20 against Wisconsin, you throw the ball 20 feet out of bounds. I think that's being a little bit too safe. But
no, he had a lot of misthrows, misfires.
Well, that was just a deliberate throw out of bounds, though, Chuck. It was 4th down.
Yeah, I know.
4th down against Wisconsin.
I'm just putting all those in the same basket, unfortunately, because that's how I see Spencer. I hate to see it like that, but you anticipate it when you see him throw and you see him perform. It's like he'll have that one good throw, which I can maybe see why the coaching staff says, hey, we got to stick with him because, you know, we had this 20-yard out route, man. He put that thing on the line. But then you see the next 8 throws, and like I said, I'm just racking up points in duck hunt. It's just exactly how I feel. And or they're off. They're just not accurate, you know, or they're too high. They're in the dirt. I mean, I don't know. I think it's frustrating sometimes to watch him, and when he's leading your team, and you see it, you know, and you see that person out there who is, I guess, has one arm behind their back, but the coach says, no, he's just putting it back there. He's not hurt. Well, at some point in time, you got to change up your philosophy and do something different. But I think if we had a losing record or a losing season, that would change. But I know you mentioned earlier when you have 10 wins, sometimes you say, well, what are we going to change? Why should we change? Well, I think we were fortunate to get what we had.
Well, I don't understand. So we can never, for the fans that say, why would you change when you get 10 wins? So you never have aspirations to play Michigan closer than 42-3 in a Big Ten championship game? We just don't care to play them closer than that? Is that how fans view that?
Well, we didn't even play them close. I mean, we pretty much, you know, took care of the Gatorade jugs and towels after the game for Michigan. I mean, that's how I felt about it. We weren't competing with them in the game, even to that point. But I agree with you. It's like I want to get past that. I don't want to just get to the game. I want to win the game. But that seems to be, you know, Kirk's philosophy is, you know, play good defense, play good special teams, and don't lose it. But they don't play to win it. And when you get to that point where you're having those type of seasons, sometimes you got to say to yourself, "Man, we want to win this. Not just I want to be just above average. I want to be the best this year, every year." But
absolutely, yeah. And again,
it is what it is.
You got to look at these units separately. They're not. It's a different sport. It's not like looking at basketball or tennis or golf. No, it's a different sport. You've got 3 different teams that make up one team basically, and you've got to look at each one individually. Yeah, they should complement each other. But are you going to sit here and tell me that Iowa's offense is complementing Iowa's defense? That's what Kirk wants, but it's not happening. And Spencer, back to your question about scheme. Spencer is the type of quarterback Iowa has often targeted. The problem is he hasn't developed like you need a kid like that to develop. You need him to excel in the pocket. You need him to be able to step up in the pocket and be able to at least get out of the pocket and make a throw on the run. And he's not great at doing that. You need a guy who's able to scramble for a few yards. He's not comfortable doing that. He's erratic with his throws on simple crossing routes. That's a problem. So, and then you combine that with the fact that the offensive line struggled this year. It's the making of a perfect storm. And I think that's just kind of why, I think that's just kind of why Iowa is in a situation where you're winning in spite of your offense.
Yeah. It stinks to see it like that, but I agree with you. I mean, he made Nate Stanley look like Lamar Jackson, and Stanley was not that big of a mobile quarterback either. But again, it doesn't take. I mean, look at Tom Brady. It just takes moving up in the pocket the right way, and navigating that offensive line with what your scheme does, knowing what you're doing. And it's been a little bit of a headache watching it. On a different note, I heard my brother's stuff about Keegan Murray, and I agree with you too. I think he's a draftable player. Maybe late first round, second round for sure. But there are some things too where I think he needs to develop. I think his major issue right now is just his mid-range game, not his post play. I think he's an athletic kid, but he definitely needs to develop that mid-range game, or at least a jump shot to back people off if he's going to drive. And he has an adequate 3-point shot for right now. But I heard that whole thing, and I wasn't on my brother's side of the table. I think he's draftable. I don't think he's a high lottery pick, I'll say that, but I think he's a player that is late first round, second round. And obviously, I think we all know how the NBA drafts. They draft on potential, what you could be, not what you are. But yeah.
I'm just, and I'm reliant, again, I'm not a draft expert. I'm just reliant on the outside pundits, and almost every mock draft that I've seen has him right now as a first round draft pick. So maybe not a lottery pick, but as far as where he's projected right now, I think he's a first round draft pick if the draft were tomorrow.
Yeah. And I think he would go, later in the first round or high second round. I can understand where Vince was coming from as far as what he needs to work on. But when you're averaging the points that you're averaging, not just a lower level competition, but when you're getting to the Big Ten season and you're able to maintain that, and you obviously have a skill set that can translate. The only thing is with Iowa's basketball scheme just in general, obviously we're not rebounding. We have issues when it comes to half court offense, in my opinion. We're a transition team, but when it comes to trying to get to the half court, we just have trouble executing. And I think Joe Toussaint's a good dribble drive point guard. I think we need to do that more with him. I don't see much isolation when it comes to things to force people into certain things defensively. And Wisconsin's a good team defensively anyways. So don't help them. But we'll see. It's a young team now. We've lost a lot of players. I want to see how it progresses. But Fran's been doing it a long time. I'm hoping that he can kind of right that ship, but who knows? We've always kind of suffered defensively. Let's kind of go from there.
Yeah, I think obviously the biggest issue, you can't lose any Big Ten rebounding battle by double figures or get doubled up on and expect to be competitive. And you can't give up 87 points to Wisconsin. I go back to the same thing I go back to every year. And unless you can play better half-court defense, forget it. It's just you're going to always have a ceiling. Very much like Iowa football, just in an opposite regard.
Yep, that is correct.
You just got to be decent on that side of the ball. And Iowa's not decent on the offensive side of ball in football, and they're not decent yet on the defensive side in basketball, because defense also, rebounding is part of defense. So unless you can secure that board, don't make a claim that you're any good on that side of the ball.
Yeah. Well, and I liked your comparison with Aaron White as opposed to Jarret Uthoff. I don't see that Jarret Uthoff comparison with Keegan. I think Keegan is a more athletic, better shooting Aaron White. He has that obviously athletic ability on the rim with the rebounding, obviously the dunks and stuff like that. But I think he's more athletic and more of a scorer than White was, obviously. But that's why I comp him to right now. But I think he can go way beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's fair because Aaron actually had a decent 3-point shot. And right now, Keegan Murray doesn't have a great 3-point shot. He's kind of hit or miss. I mean, he made 5 of 6 against Maryland, but struggled a bit from outside against Wisconsin. So he's got work to do. I'll give you that. No question.
Yep. Well, I won't keep you, man. I appreciate the call. Again, when you have Vince call in, tell him that I'm always the better half.
All right, Chuck. Appreciate the call as always.
All right. Have a good night.
Take care. All right. Couple things. Of course, my pen stops working. All right. I want to address a couple of comments here in the chat. All right. And we've been here a lot longer this evening than I anticipated, which is nice, but I also have to get some sleep. I got an early morning tomorrow. So first of all, Dustin says, how does the O-line look next season? I think the O-line, assuming the young guys develop, I've talked about that 21 class. I think personnel-wise, they've got plenty of opportunities, but the bottom line is they need work, and they're losing Kyler Schott. They're probably losing Linderbaum. You hope Richmond really progresses. You hope DeYoung and Jack Plum. Somebody needs to step up at tackle, right? Now, you hope maybe they can also get like a guy like Hunter Norzad from Cornell. He's in the transfer portal. Iowa's in his top 5. I have more confidence in the offensive line than I do quarterback, and it's not really that close at this point. All right, moving down the list here. CJ had a question. You said it's possible for Iowa to target a wide receiver. I've only seen the offensive line target. Have you seen any wide receiver target? I do know Tyler Barnes started following Isaiah Nair, who I believe committed today. I don't remember who he committed to, but the kid from Wyoming, who was wanted by almost everybody, committed to a school today. And again, that's just, I'm just reading into Tyler Barnes, and he started following him after he entered the portal. I wouldn't be surprised because they're losing Tracy, and they're going to lose Max Cooper. I know Cooper hasn't played much, but as far as depth is concerned, we don't know what's going to happen with Charlie Jones. I'm assuming he's still thinking about his decision, but who knows? If he comes back, that would certainly help the wide receiver position, as would the return of Nico Reganey. So again, but I don't know the status on either one of those guys at this point. Tim, what's Goodson's chances of being drafted? I'd like to think he's going to get a late flyer. I would not be shocked if he doesn't get drafted, but I would say probably 6th or 7th round. I hope he does. It would help Iowa. It would help Iowa to have a success story at running back in the league. But again, my honest opinion, I don't love his chances. Again, to me, there's a lot of running backs that are very similar to Tyler Goodson. But again, it would help Iowa if he could succeed. And he's been a great representative of the program. And I think, I wish him all the best. I hope he can find a niche in the NFL. It's tough to do, though. Again, a lot of backs, and you have a short pro life if you're a running back. All right. I believe we had a question here from Chris. Any word on Casper? Nothing more than, he visited this past season, right? And obviously the Xavier Nwankpa, I know he's friends with Xavier and Proctor from Southeast Polk. So certainly if you get one, you have a better chance of getting the other 2. And if you get 2, you got, I think, a much better chance of getting all 3. They've got Nwankpa. We'll see on Proctor and Casper. Casper would be huge if you get him. And hopefully that answers Jake's question as well. He'd be a game changer. You've got to be able to take advantage of those roots with who his dad is, his success here. And Kyler Casper is wanted by virtually everyone. So, it would be tremendous if Iowa could get him. And I don't know. As far as a timetable, I think we're still waiting to hear from him as far as when he wants to when he wants to make that decision. Andy, we talked a little bit about Graves and Xavier Nwankpa earlier in the show. They played an All-America game today. And I thought, again, Graves stood out. I didn't see as much of Nwankpa. I was kind of in and out of the game, but I will say Graves looked good. And again, that's the one thing I took. When I actually saw him on the field, his motor is still what I saw on tape in high school. He doesn't have, I don't think, as long of a wingspan as a guy like Epinesa, which could potentially hurt you if you're playing end. But I think he can play inside and out. And the dude is just built. He is built like a bodybuilder, and he's a high schooler. So I think he's going to play right away. Now, it's unfortunate he's not enrolling early, but I still think he gets there this summer, gets in that weight room, and then has a good fall camp. I think he can play right away. They need pass rushers, and I think certainly with Van Valkenburg leaving, Aaron Graves could fill that need fairly early. All right. Tim had a question here. Let me run down to it here. Actually, that's the same question. Yep. Graves and Xavier. Again, I thought both guys looked good. Graves stood out a little bit more, and I was also kind of watching him a little closer. Again, because of the level of competition between these two guys. Xavier, of course, playing at a pretty high level in high school. Aaron, not necessarily at Class 2A here in Iowa, but I thought Aaron was really good. Destiny Pirate. Does the Deuce Hogan walk-on read that no top schools were offering him? Is there a lack of buzz on him for reasons the Hawks staff is too polite to share? I wouldn't. I don't know. I that's a good question. I mean, I think it's tough for anybody who is third on the depth chart or fourth on a depth chart. I don't care what level you play at, for him to generate a lot of Power 5 scholarship interest. It's just tough to do that. It's tough to transfer. I mean, look at Peyton Manziel. He had to go a level or two down. You look at, Derby ended up being a pretty darn successful tight end at Arkansas, but his hopes of playing quarterback were really zapped when he left Iowa. And Iowa's had other guys. I'm trying to think. Drew Cook. I don't remember what happened with Drew. Of course, he was at tight end at Iowa. Maybe he graduated from here, but of course he never played here. Trying to think of the Ryan Boyle. He also left. I believe he played FCS football. So it's just tough. I admire Deuce Hogan because perhaps it's a situation where he goes to Kentucky, pays for a year in school, and then earns a scholarship. And heck, that's a cool way if his family can afford it. That's a cool way to have a chance to play at the Power 5 level. But I don't have any inside information on that. But I would guess that he had opportunities at lower levels. Just looking at his high school tape, he clearly had upside, and it sounds like potentially there was some tape that they were able to grab from Iowa practices that, again, I would think there were opportunities, if not at the group of 5 level, at least at the FCS level. All right. What do I think about Tanner Morgan coming to Iowa? That's not happening because he's, I believe he's returning to Minnesota. So no, that's not happening. Andy says Justin Jacobs is terrible in space. Need to watch the tape on him. He needs to really step up in that department. I happen to remember, now I'm not a linebacking guru. I do remember that game against Iowa State. He made some really good plays in space, Andy. So again, he's young. I'll have to watch tape closer. I'll take your word for it that he's got a big jump there. But I think his athleticism, again, maybe he didn't perform down the stretch in space like he should. But certainly another year in another spring will certainly help him. But I think his athleticism, I think he could potentially be a cash guy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm way off on that. But I think his athleticism would lend itself to that possible destination as far as position for Justin Jacobs. But again, I think they'll have other candidates there. No question about it. Erica, who is going to replace Linderbaum at center? Well, Matt Fagan was on the depth chart all season. Didn't see him against Kentucky. Not sure if he was banged up. We saw Kyler Schott slide over to center. So that's a big question mark. If Lindy leaves, which we assume he is going to leave, I'm assuming Fagan will take over. But you'd have to think somebody, whether it be somebody from the 21 class, somebody is being run there in practice, right? Somebody other than Fagan, I would have to think so. So that's a big question mark. In spring, again, will be huge for center growth and that offensive line in general. And then, of course, summer strength and conditioning will be huge. Andy says Britt will replace Lindy at center. If Britt's going to replace him, I'm surprised that he didn't slide over there for those few snaps in the Citrus Bowl. Maybe he will, but we saw Schott slide over, and we really haven't seen much other than Linderbaum, and then of course the few snaps from Kyler Schott. I did like this. So somebody took the time to make a Spencer Petras account, or maybe this is Spencer. Maybe this is Spencer. I'm kind of confused at the B in the logo, which tells me perhaps this is a changed username. But Spencer, if you can hear this, I have respect for you, brother. But you got to play better, brother. You got to play better, and I think Ken O'Keefe, your coach, has got to coach better. Again, I love the fact that we've got enough people here where people are starting to come up with fake usernames. That's just fine. All right. Seth says, how many other 10-win schools were there this year? I think around 15 to 16 Power 5 schools, Seth. But Iowa, I think, was ranked, as far as rankings, probably near the bottom of those Power 5 schools, because Iowa ended up being ranked 15. Of course, they'll come out with final rankings after the playoff game. But no, it's incredible that Iowa won 10 games. I said that after it happened. It's incredible. I don't believe they can do that again next year. I don't see any route to doing that next year unless this offense gets a lot better. Coach Morgan, Reese Morgan, I believe he's still involved with the program. I know he retired, but I believe he's actually still involved. But I do think his departure was a bit of a blow to this coaching staff. Ben says, Ken O'Keefe was a terrible OC. Why should he still be employed as the coach of the most important position on the team? John, by recruiting rankings, we probably just put together the 3 best recruiting classes we've ever had on the whole. And that's why I complimented Tyler Barnes earlier. I'm not dissing Tyler Barnes. If you're doing your job, if Brian Ferentz were tearing this offense up right now and doing great, we wouldn't be talking about him being Kirk Ferentz's son. So performance is what we're looking at. And certainly I'd have to say that Tyler Barnes and the recruiting staff, they're doing pretty good right now. All right. Destiny Pirate says, we need you to make the "we need you" speech. Leave the fan petition to me, Coach Don, for OC and quarterbacks coach. Erica, love to see what Padilla can do, and also like to see Labus. Absolutely, and I would hope we'd get a good look at both of those guys in the spring. An even better look than what we've seen. Spaghetti Factory wants to see more Wildcat. Maybe. I don't know. With losing Goodson, you got to be able to throw out of the Wildcat. That's one thing that annoyed me about the Wildcat. If you're going to run the Wildcat, have some option of being able to throw out of it. And maybe they do, but they haven't been able to use it. Okay, people are supportive of the Joey Labus to start idea. I'm supportive if he's the guy. And Ben Kearns brings up Gavin and LaShawn. They look look great. Both of them did look. I can't even talk. It's late in the night. It's 10:15. They both looked great. Get it out of my mouth. Wilbur says we want Bob Stoops. He's available, right? He's available. John says, I think Linderbaum is figuring out what kind of injury insurance he can get if he comes back. He loves college ball, and I think he knows he can't come back once he's gone. No announcement yet. Bit interesting. We haven't heard from him yet. Kyle, Iowa's offensive identity is pro style with some spread concepts. The red zone offense has to be the top priority this offseason. Red zone offense was bad. Jake, Kirk retires in 2 years. Stoops comes in after a few years, after a few years off fresh and ready to go for his alma mater. Clock is ticking on that, Jake. If Bob's going to come here, it's got to be the next couple of years. Maybe Kirk does retire in 2 years, but Bob's not that much younger than Kirk Ferentz. But I would have no problem with that. Perfect comment here, Cole. Look at how hard Nebraska has hit the transfer portal. They needed a quarterback. They recognized it, and they weren't afraid to be out there. And they were rewarded for it. Casey Thompson is a Husker. Tate and Banks, absolutely. Both of those guys were really good. They had their, especially Tate, he had his moments, but for the most part, both of those guys were really solid quarterbacks. There's a reason why Iowa won Big Ten titles when they were here. Oatmeal for life. Iowa has to play Michigan and Ohio State next year. Huge step up in competition. Absolutely huge. Bob would be great and is a Hawkeye, but he has nothing else to prove in his career. I think he likes his new gig and being loved by everybody. I don't know that he loves his gig at Fox. He doesn't seem real happy when he's on the air. Maybe I'm reading into it wrong, but I think he still has a niche to coaching. I just don't know how long that'll last and how long will he be available if he really wants to get back into coaching. Iowa tries to get to 3rd and 8 and succeed way too much. You got to be in 3rd and short with this offense. I mean, and that's why. I mean, obviously Kirk is not real confident in 3rd and long. We saw that. But so when the offense, we did have some issues despite Tyler Goodson at times. He had over 1,100 yards, but when you consistently get 8 and then lose 4, you're going to be behind the chains a lot. So perhaps having these bigger bodies at halfback helps Iowa to stay ahead of the chains, and that will help a guy like Petrus if Petrus is the guy next year. Appreciate this, Ben. Thank you for tuning in. Cole, the main difference between Nebraska and Iowa is expectations. Yes, Nebraska has fired coaches, but it's all because of their high expectations. I don't see how us as Iowa fans see that as a bad thing. Fair comment. Fair comment. Pitch says, hey, Corey, if you're going to show my comment, at least talk about it. Hey, Pitch, if you're going to write out my name, spell it right, sir, please. And I've mentioned your comments. I don't think I've had any problems with your comments. Chris says, I'm a Niners fan. Crapolo and Petrus are the same. Both are dump down kings. Garoppolo's an NFL player, though. I don't think Petrus is that. All right. Yes, thank you, Mario Fishing Family. Family Fishing. Ryan Boyle did go to Indiana State. So again, going a level down, and I think he was successful in Indiana State, as I recall. Kyle Robinson, what's your take on Rocky Lombardi? Is he in the portal? Last I checked, he's still at Northern Illinois. I don't see Iowa going. He was very, very sporadic at Michigan State. One could say he was a bit erratic. So definitely a high upside. He's an Iowa kid, but I don't know. I don't know on that one. Thank you, Mark. 17 Power 5 teams with 10 wins. I think I got that right. Cole, Nebraska got Casey Thompson and a 5-star LSU wide receiver transfer. Chris, I've heard this before. If Fran can teach Iowa football how to play offense and Phil Parker can teach Iowa basketball defense, we will have 2 great programs. Arlen Bruce III. Arlen Bruce III. And I have no question. This is the real Arlen Bruce III. So this is Arlen Bruce IV's father. I think I can say that. Arlen, appreciate you listening. He's called in before. Go offer Caleb Williams $1.5 million to quarterback for 2 future round draft picks and wide receiver in 10 and 6. I'm gonna leave it at that. The NIL is a big part of it. You're absolutely right, Arlen. And again, Iowa has connections to Oklahoma. And I'm not just saying this, Arlen Bruce and Keegan Johnson. That's why I've said earlier in the show, Iowa's wide receiver room is pretty darn good right now. They're in good hands. It's not like the 15 situation with Beathard. They've got an opportunity to be exceptional for several years. And again, you got to have a quarterback and get him the ball. That's the bottom line. Jarret, will there be a kids' day this year? I assume so. Right? It's usually in August. I would have no reason to think there won't be. Kyle, Iowa's identity is a pro-style offense with some spread concepts. And yes, Arlen, we know exactly who you're talking about. Arlen Bruce IV and Keegan Johnson. Absolutely. Marcia, Kirk wants a quarterback that's a game manager and stays within the structure of the offense. That's true. And here's the deal. You can make you can make just about any quarterback be a game manager with taking away playmaking abilities, right? You can coach or mold. And I'm trying to think of an example. Brad Banks is a good example of a guy who we make him out to be he was a dual threat quarterback, but let's be honest, Brad Banks was still primarily a pocket passer. And he still played within the confines of the Iowa offense. If he played for Texas, and I'm thinking back during the Vince Young era, he probably would have ran a lot more and been a lot different at quarterback. So say Iowa goes after a guy like DeLora from Washington State or Caleb Williams. If he comes here, he's going to have to play within the confines of the Iowa system. And so the onus is on the Iowa coaches recognizing a guy's talent level, recognizing a guy's strengths, and being able to hone those in and use them while still complementing, doing what Iowa intends to complement the defense, right? And there's a way to balance that, right? I mean, you got to be able to figure out a way to have a playmaker at quarterback, but not have it be like the situation in Nebraska where Adrian Martinez is making about 50% of the plays for your team and 50% of the plays for the opposing team. And I think Iowa has the ability to do that. Again, is it Brian Ferentz? Is it Ken O'Keefe? I don't know. But the bottom line is you've got coaches who have, again, Ken O'Keefe's got tons of experience. I'm not saying it's always been good experience. Kirk Ferentz has been around forever. I know he's an offensive line coach, but heck, you'd think you have pieces there. You've got Don Patterson giving you analytics. He lives right there in Iowa City. You've got offensive minds that can help that already work for you. They already help. And I think there are ways to attract, high-end quarterbacks, but you've got to be willing to make adjustments. You've got to be willing to go out of your comfort zone and be willing to tell a kid, hey, as long as you do your job, come in here, we really like you as our starter for 2022. And I don't know that Iowa is comfortable doing that. Kyle, Brad Banks would have been a great draft pick for the Dallas Cowboys in the 2003 NFL draft if Parcells would have picked him up in the 6th or 7th round. It's disappointing that Brad's career never panned out and probably never was going to. But boy, the dude was great in college. Cole, Iowa should go after Chubba Purdy. Looks like Nebraska's going to get him, although Oklahoma offered him today 4 years of eligibility. So you're telling me, Cole, that Nebraska's going to grab Purdy and Thompson? If that happens, then shame on Iowa again. The fact that Nebraska could land multiple guys, and I don't know if that's the case, but and I know Chubba Purdy hasn't played a lot at Florida State, my understanding. I don't watch a lot of Seminole football, but yeah, that is another guy we didn't mention earlier. Jarret, the actor, does Kirk hang it up after 2022? I would guess no. That would be my guess. I don't think he's gone for at least a couple more years. Cole, do you have Twitter? Yes, sir, I do. From the Hawkeye of the Storm. From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Twitter. I'll throw it up here. If you haven't already subscribed, please do that, but also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. All right, folks, the names again. Let me run through these names before we get off here. If you missed our show earlier, let me pull it up here. Maybe you say your voice doesn't matter, but get on Twitter. Tweet about it. Be active. I know Mark Rogers tweeted out something about this earlier about DeLora to Iowa. Is it possible? Should Iowa pursue him? Retweet it. Make as much noise as you can. Maybe it'll get through to someone. Caleb Williams. We know, again, he stated he wants to go to a school that has a history of developing NFL products. Jayden DeLora, reigning Pac-12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. He's out there. Taisun Phommachanh, the backup from Clemson who Iowa recruited in 2019. He had played with Nico Reganey in high school. He's available. The starter from West Virginia. Jarret Doege's available. The starter from Virginia Tech. Braxton Burmeister is available, and John Rice Plumlee. Just a few that are still available, and it's possible for more guys to enter the portal, but the clock is ticking. A lot of guys are already off the board. Iowa's got to move quickly. Voice of College Football, Chubba Purdy has thrown 58 passes in his Florida State career, 3 this season. So that's a question mark. Again, I know there was some hype around him. I know he's Brock Purdy, right? He's Brock Purdy's brother, right? I believe. Is he Brock Purdy's brother, his cousin? He's related to Brock Purdy. Doesn't sound like he's coming to Iowa State. Sounds like he wants to make a name for himself. Maybe he wants to go to Iowa. I don't know. I just want Iowa to contact someone. Just show me that you're willing to go after someone. Just contact someone. Eric, I hate to be a pessimist, but I just told another guy tonight I have learned to accept that nothing major changes until Ferentz is gone, mostly Kirk. Thank you, Mark. He is Brock's brother. And again, there was speculation maybe he'd end up at Iowa State, but he has stated that, or at least Brock Purdy has stated that it's unlikely to happen. So maybe he would be up for a trip to Iowa City. But again, not going to happen unless Iowa reaches out and does something to contact him. Again, somebody, just contact somebody. Appreciate it, everybody. We will be here tomorrow night. We'll actually be over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel with Coach Don Patterson. All right, national championship preview. Be sure to be there. We'll have a live call-in show, and we'll be breaking down analytics that Coach Patterson has compiled for the Georgia-Alabama matchup. Again, Sunday, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central Time, over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel here on YouTube. Again, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to our channel. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We were able to do that over at the Iowa channel. Now we're trying to get this to 1,000. So please subscribe, share our show on social media. We will be back with you tomorrow night over at the Iowa channel. We appreciate all the calls this evening. Perhaps all hope is not lost. Maybe we'll be shocked. Maybe Kirk and the staff will shock us, and we'll hear that they've reached out to a quarterback. But until that happens, I'm going to keep on my shtick. You never know. You can always hold out hope. So appreciate everybody listening this evening, and we will talk to you tomorrow night. Have a great night.